for a proposal?
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
Basically, what was the purpose of your communication with Jake?
I reached out to Jake because Jake works for Mercury Public Affairs, which is one of the greatest and best public affairs firms in the nation. And they had done extensive work with local governments, talking about the accomplishments that local governments had done and talking and communicating that to the residents of those local governments. I knew that Jake, I knew his work. I know how diligent and good he is. And I know the Mercury reputation. So to me, it was a no-brainer to reach out to the people who do this type of work very, very, very well.
So just for clarity, you reached out to him specifically for a proposal regarding outreach from the mayor's office.
I reached out to him to do an educational and informational brochure about the progress that the city has did in the year of 2022.
Okay. I think you already answered this, but I'll give you an opportunity to take another shot at it if you think it's necessary. Basically, considering that you are the head of the mayor's communications department, you have a full supportive staff. Why did you feel it was necessary to bring outside consultants rather than do that mailer in-house?
I thought it was, well, it was necessary in order to do it to the best possible ability. Bring on great mail people to produce great mail. And we have a lot of responsibilities in the Office of Communication. There's a lot of communication that we do. But in order to produce a mail piece that was effective and informative and educational, I felt the best route was to go and bring on one of the best.
Okay. On January 18th, the law department advised the communications department in writing of the contract provision that prohibits the use of public funds on political activity. Do you remember being advised by the law department that public funds cannot be spent on political activities?
I don't remember ever being advised by the law department about anything of this nature, no.
Okay, well, there was an email which you were copied on from a member of the law department specifically raising the red flag regarding this type of mailer and that public funds cannot be used as. So you're saying you don't recall reviewing that email?
No, I saw that email, and that email was in, I believe, the middle of January.
January 18th.
Yes. The mail piece had already been out.
The mail piece had already been out.
Yeah, it had already been out. So, I mean, I appreciated Austin's email, but it had already been gone. It had already been out. So it wasn't as if they were telling me or telling anyone not to do something. It had already been out.
Who reviewed the mailer before it went out to make sure that it complied with the law?
That would be Mercury. I mean, that's their job.
So
make sure that the mailer is compliant with all local, state, federal laws in terms of what we're trying to get accomplished and what we're trying to do. I rely on Mercury to do the content and the design and also who it goes to and make sure that it is legal in terms of not being political, not being partisan, not having any over political messaging. And so that's why I bought on Mercury. So they would bring their expertise in this area to this project.
Okay. So from your position, the responsibility as to whether or not this mailer complied with state law rests solely with Mercury.
In my opinion, the expertise that Mercury brings to the table is also making sure that these mail pieces comply with all the laws.
Okay. I believe in that packet, we have the contract that you have with Mercury Consulting. Can you point to the provision in that contract that delineates that responsibility for complying with state law to Mercury? I'll find the section for you really quick.
I mean, just for the record, I don't deal with contracts. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't write the contract or put in provisions or stipulations. So I wouldn't know what's in the contract. So I don't know if any of that information that you just asked is in the contract because the contracts are really not part of my purview.
Okay, so your position is it is Mercury's responsibility, and I guess if it's not contractually, morally, I guess, that the mailer comply with state law.
Yes, I mean, I think it's common sense when you hire someone to do something that they do it in order to your specifications. And part of the specifications was making sure that this mail piece did not violate any laws. So it would be in Mercury's best interest to satisfy what the client asked for.
Well, I mean, let's talk about what the client asked for. In the emails you have with Mercury, and please take a moment to, I could point to the section if necessary, but do you recall conversations identifying a universe of specific voters?
Do I remember conversations defining a universe?
They called it a voter screen.
Correct.
Right. So as the client, the city, the mayor's office communicated with Mercury that they wanted to target a specific group of voters. Is that correct?
No, we did not. Our intention and our goal was to talk to as many people in the city of New Orleans as we possibly could. They weren't targeted, they weren't screened. Mercury's responsibility, part of their responsibility with this project is to find the people who received this mail piece. And so they produced a number, and where they got the number from or how they determined what the number, that's part of their special sauce. And so that's what we asked them to do.
So it is your testimony that there were not email communications between the communications office and Mercury where you had a conversation regarding a universe of voters, in particular where Mercury asked you whether or not to include the under 35 demographic and how could they better reach them. You're saying that Mercury on its own, at its own direction, decided to limit the group of voters, and it was your office's determination that should go to all voters.
No, actually, the email that you're referring to is me asking Mercury, how come there are no people under 35 in what you sent over to a proposal? What Mercury had sent back to me was that it was people under 35. I was just reading it wrong. So I asked a stupid question, but the information was already provided for Mercury in terms of providing people who were under 35.
Well, no, actually, in that exchange, it said you wanted that the goal was to target individuals who had voted in the last two municipal elections.
That's what the Mercury screen came up with. That's the decision that Mercury made in terms of them being able to get as many people as they possibly could. They decided that this was the voting, this was the election that we were going to pull the data from. Again, we don't have any role in that in my office.
Well, the determination on how much a mailer costs.
I'm sorry,
Sorry,
Okay.
again, sorry, I'm counsel for Mr. I know the rules of evidence do not apply here. However, there are still objections to propriety of questions. I would request that if you are referring to a document and trying to quote from it, that you point to the document and actually quote from the document, so that we can all be on the same page and everyone knows what we're asking. However,
This is a councilmatic hearing, not a court of law. If Mr. Joseph believes that we need to find time to pull the specific document, we can, so we can all be speaking from the same position. I'm asking him to give testimony from memory, but if that's not necessary, we can all pull the actual documents and look at them, but it's not necessary. But if you would advise him that he should not answer unless the document's in front of him, we can go pull that document real quick. It's in the file.
okay.
So here is the email. Oh, my bad.
Do you know what the question, if you know what the question was, you can answer. Sorry, I got lost in the question.
Would you like to repeat the question?
So the question is, in your communications with Mercury, they cited two specific things. The first is obviously the universe of voters, and they cited in emails that the targeted audience was to include individuals who voted in the last two municipal elections. I guess the question is, one, since this was a communication, you were aware of what their target universe was. If the intention was to be as inclusive as possible, why didn't the mayor's office say all residents of the city of New Orleans? Because when we're talking about the law, part of showing that this is a communication from the mayor's office to residents are different than voters. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, they can be the same.
They can be, every voter is a resident, but every resident is not necessarily a voter, correct?
Possible, yes, of course. But I mean, in terms of what Mercury is looking for, in terms of getting the information to mail out to people,
Yeah.
I don't know where I would get information from all residents. I don't know where I would get that from.
Well, first off, you could pull the property tax bills. You can
I
pull,
don't pay property taxes, I rent, but I vote, so I don't know how I would be
you
able to
can pull the
receive.
property tax bills, you could pull individual.
I mean, so this is, I mean, I think
Councilman Moreno can actually just read the email. That might clear if you also
Yes.
section.
Sure, absolutely.
no, but I want to go back to the
Hang on,
property
Mr.
tax.
Joseph, just so
Sorry,
that we're on the same
because
page as your
I have
council
email
said.
here. I just want to go back to the property tax part because, I mean.
Yeah.
Mercury's job was to find what you would call, what you're calling the mail universe of who we were going to mail to. I'm not sure if Mercury can get property tax information from the whoever within city government holds it. I know that I wouldn't feel proper asking anyone for people's addresses in my capacity as the communications director. I just, and plus I don't feel that pulling property tax data gives you a full picture of the people who participate in the, like, again, I rent, I don't pay property taxes, so I wouldn't receive that if you went to the property tax rolls, so to speak, and mailed it out.
One, I gave property tax as an example, not the only example.
Well,
The point being that one can pull from a variety of different types of information to get an overall universe. In fact, something that is less specific and less targeted would be paying a canvas company to stuff doors or stuff residences. Those are things that are not specific. Councilman Moreno has the exact email. The issue is that Mercury, as a contractor, told the mayor's office, this is who we're targeting and this is how we're targeting them. Part of negotiating a contract towards the mailer is approving that process. Council Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just so that, to your council's point, so that we're all on the same page. If you look at the notebook or the paperwork that you receive with the documents, we're looking at Exhibit A2, which is on the bottom also labeled page 657 of 930. This is an email from Gregory Joseph on Monday, December 12, 2022 to Jake Delamani. Excuse me if I pronounce his name wrong. It says, Jake, how do we get voters under 35 into our mail universe? How many under 35 voters with the last 2 odd year municipal election screen exist? Question mark. There are also further emails that are part of Exhibit A3 also talking about the overall voter universe. There's someone by the name of Carolyn Riggs from Mercury. If you'd look at, once again, Exhibit A3, page 151 of 930 pages, where on an email from Carolyn Riggs on Monday, January 2nd to Jake Delamani, with communications@nola.gov on this email, along with John Lawson, talking about clarification on what topics / messaging to be directed at what sub-universes. For example, if we mail to women, what do we want to talk about? Historic nature of election, leadership, what else? Question mark. Additional emails also part of Exhibit A3. Once again, this is from Carolyn Riggs to communications@nola.gov, also John Lawson. This is on December 29th, talking about that we have revised the universe to expand it, including all voters who have voted in at least one non-presidential election since 2017. This yields 100,054,709 voters in 106,897 households. And then it gives the different percentages there. And then it talks about a final list to select. And so then there is an email, which is page 152 of 930, once again, still Exhibit A3. this is from Carolyn Riggs, once again to communications@nola.gov. It says, hello, Gregory. Thanks for a great conversation on Tuesday. I wanted to follow up on a couple of things to keep moving us forward. Mercury to-dos. We are working on pulling updated target universes based on our conversation, and we will share shortly for your review. And that's just a sampling, Mr. President, on some of the emails regarding the universe of voters to be selected.
Thank you for that clarification. Going to another line of questioning, is your position that this mailer, if the content of the mailer and the like was not reviewed by the law department prior to it going out? And your position was that Empress was responsible for making sure it complied with state law? Mercury, I apologize.
Mercury has the expertise in this part. Mercury does the mail. They do direct mail. They do communications for local governments. They do advising, public affairs, a whole string of things that they do at the highest level of what they do. So yes, that is their responsibility to make sure that what they are producing for us doesn't run afoul of law.
Okay, and as I said, and I know you don't read the contract, but if the contract has no stipulation that that is Mercury's responsibility, who does that fall on at that point?
Well, if the contract doesn't have any stipulation that Mercury has to produce something that the client wants, I mean, that's what their job is.
Well, I think that's two different
I
questions.
mean, I'm not.
I asked you, did Mercury have the responsibility to make sure that the document was legally compliant with state law?
Yes, they did, because it was.
If the contract does not state that, and it does not, who does that responsibility fall on?
Again, it's Mercury's responsibility to make sure that they're producing something that is in accordance and okay with the law. And that is what we asked them to do. We asked them to produce an educational, informational piece about the benefits and the progress the city has made. And it had to be nonpartisan. It had to be non-political. It had to just be information and education. And that's what we asked them to produce. And that's what they produced. Is there a clause in the contract? I don't know. Maybe Katie can read the contract at some point and see if there's some sort of says that they have to. I don't know, because I don't know the contract, but I don't understand that every little thing about doing a job needs to be laid out in some kind of contract when you know exactly what you're being tasked to do. I don't have to. There's no. Yeah. I mean,
Well,
I don't.
I appreciate that's your interpretation of what Mercury's responsibility is, but the law regarding the use of public funds applies to the governmental agencies that spend the money, not to the advertising agents that produce the pieces. So I appreciate that your position currently is that Mercury has a responsibility to follow the law, even if that is not contractually in there. But when it comes to the use of public funds, the responsibility, according to Attorney General opinions and settled law, is that the responsibility of the use of public funds falls upon the agency itself. I can read the law to you if you'd like, but I don't think that's necessary unless you'd like me to read you the law to get the clarification.
It's your hearing. You can read whatever you like.
Oh, sorry, Councilwoman Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. So you're saying, Mr. Joseph, that it was up to Mercury to make all the determinations regarding legality of the mailer.
That's part of their that's part of their responsibility. That is part of their job. That is part of what they offer as a service to their clients. I mean,
so with all the checks, all the checks is on Mercury.
All the what?
All the checks of like making sure everything's, totally solid, ready to go, legal is on Mercury.
Yeah, they're the mail firm. Yes.
The reason why I asked this question is because there's an email, which is Exhibit A4. So we're on the same page 87 of 930, which is from Carolyn Griggs, once again, to Leslie Thomas at NOLA.gov, who is the Deputy Director of Communications, and Mr. Joseph, you're CC'd. And she is asking the city about the mailer and a legal question about the mailer. She says, do we need to add a disclaimer to these mail pieces, i.e. paid for by the city of New Orleans? In most cases, this answer is no, but we'd like to ensure that you are in compliance. So this very much sounds like Mercury is not the legal expert here. They're actually tossing it back to the city to make sure that they're in legal compliance.
Is that I'm sorry, is there a question there?
I mean, it just seems to contradict what you're saying.
What, that they asked whether or not there need to be a paid for on it?
No, what I
Say that in most cases, no, but we just want to make sure that you're in compliance.
Therefore, if they're the
That's
final,
picking the answer of
they're
all of
if they're the
content.
final legal opinion, as you're saying, this is obviously showing that that's not the case, sir. I mean, it's clearly in the emails that they're pushing it back on the city to make sure that you all are in compliance, because it seems here like they don't seem to think that they're the legal expert in this all. They're just designing a mailer. They're designing a mailer for you all. The legal responsibility, as the council president has said, is actually on the city. Thank you.
Ms. Moreno, if that's the way you interpret that email, if you feel that they're shaking any responsibility to make sure that the piece they're producing for us is educational, informative, to educate the people of the city of New Orleans about our progress, if you feel that they're saying we have no legal responsibility in this, that is your opinion. You're very well entitled to it. I don't see that
It's
from
not
this
an opinion.
email. I don't see that.
They're asking a question.
They're
The
asking a
compliance
question,
is
but
being
they're not
asked to the
shucking
city.
their responsibility. They're
And
not
they're
saying
asking-
they have no response. Does it say, hey, we don't have any legal responsibility about this, so answer these questions, or should we do this? It's a question about whether or not we should put a paid for on it.
Yeah.
They say in most cases,
And
no.
they're asking you
They
all for
don't. Right, they're
for the
asking-
legal review. And you're saying that the legal review is on Mercury, which
No,
this email
Exactly,
therefore
and they're
contradicts.
right, so is there
contradicts
something
this.
wrong with the people who are doing a legal review to ask?
Mr.
their
President, I'm
clients
done
some
with my
info-
questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you refer to Exhibit D3, which is an email from Mr. Delamani to Carolyn Riggs, on which you are copied, you seem to repeatedly state that the purpose of this mailer was educational in purpose. However, it would seem Mercury specifically included mailer topics for your approval on fiscal responsibility to respond to a negative coverage regarding the Cantrell administration spending. Particularly, Mr. Delamani states, if we have issues messaging that lends to itself to sub-universes, as mentioned above, can we adjust? I don't know that it makes sense. We can't be overly political. Also, from what I see, among the criticisms of the Cantrell are spending issues. So I suggest we include a couple of pieces to tout fiscal responsibility, tax relief, if applicable at all. It would seem that what is the educational purpose of responding to negative media criticism?
I'm sorry, ask that again?
You have repeatedly stated the nature of this mailer was educational in purpose. What is the purpose of responding to negative media criticism? How is that educational in purpose rather than political in nature?
Well, this is an email between Jake and Carolyn. That's him talking to his colleague. What he's writing, if you want to know what it means, I would say that you should ask him. We're not on this email. We're not even CC'd on it. This is an email between Jake and his colleague, and he's laying out whatever it is that he thinks. So.
Okay, well, can you refer to Exhibit A3, page 153, which does include you on it and doesn't include your office? There are repeated questions regarding different photographs that they are seeking from your office to include in the email. Specifically, they're asking for additional photos that you think showcase the mayor's strong leadership, and to please share them. So obviously you shared photographs of the mayor in strong leadership positions, as we show from the email that's posted up, the mailer that is posted on the wall up there for your review. Other side. Those are the photographs that you included, correct? Provided to Mercury.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
Going,
not sure about the city landscape. That might have came from public stock, but everything else is from us.
okay. Going back to an earlier question. So when this mailer was created with Mercury, this mailer was not reviewed by the law department or provided by the law department for review, though it used public funds to make sure it complied with state law.
City attorney's office did not review this before it went out, no.
Okay. And your position on the timeline is that when the city attorney's office was made aware and that email was sent on 1/18, which was essentially a red flag saying this could violate state law, from your perspective, the mailer was already mailed.
What page is that on?
I'll pull it up from here a second. One second. B4, I'm sorry. D4.
Saying B or D?
D is in dog.
He is in dog, page
D4.
854 of 930.
Okay, so that is D4. It is. The font on mine is a different size. All right, so it's 854 of 930. And it includes language which says, as promised, well, we'll not read the entire email to you, but it cites the section, Article 9, Section O, which reads, prohibition on political activity, and lists the law regarding it. Based on the proposal, I want to make sure the communication is aware of the provision above, and if you have any concerns or questions, let me know. So Austin Wilte, with the city attorney's office, brought up the issue that this could be problematic. Your previous statement was that by the time you received this on January 18th, the mailer had been dropped.
Well, that's when I received it. It had already been out, but he's not talking about the mail piece in itself. He's talking about the proposal. He says, based on the proposal, I just want to make sure the comms is aware of the provision above the proposal.
Which proposal?
I don't know.
Well,
Ask him.
no, I said because it's an interesting point. Which proposal? Because there are three proposals. There's the original proposal from Mercury that was 30,000. And then there's the spawned separate new two proposals, which are split into two $15,000 contracts, one that was backdated to December and one that was front dated to, I think it was April. So which of the proposals is he citing from? You don't know.
You would have to ask Austin that.
Okay. So your position is Mercury was responsible for complying that all this was done according to state law.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that Mercury on its own selected the universe of voters with, other than you throwing in under 35, other than the fact that postage is determined by the amount of voters, so it has to be approved by the client, that for your perspective, that vote, that universe of voters was just the people they could probably reach.
And I don't
You
understand.
previously stated, and we cited the communication with Mercury regarding the universe of voters, and the term voters is used by them, that this provision was sent to voters who voted in the last two municipal elections. And you're saying the choice to target voters was Mercury's choice and not the communication department's choice.
No, it's not their choice. That's what we hired them to do, to find the people we can talk to. They didn't decide to raise their hand and say volunteer for that. One of the reasons we bring a firm of Mercury's stature and caliber on is because they have expertise in this issue. And so, yes, they're going to come up with what you would call the universe or the target or whatever it is, but they're going to make that decision based on how many people they're able to reach. And they're going to use whatever public information they have at their disposal to get that information. So it wasn't like
That's interesting. You say what public information. Didn't the mayor's office have to pay Mercury to get the voter file?
No, it was part of their contract. It was part of the $15,000 contract.
So
It was
you
included.
paid them to get the voter file. That was in their contracts. The city of New Orleans.
No, they
paid for
decided
Mercury.
that they wanted to get a voter file. And this was going to be the way to get, as you had just said earlier, there are or could be a lot of ways to get this information. They decided that they were going to use the voter file. We could have bought the National Enquirer's mailing list, I guess, and hired a canvas firm to walk around the city and hand them out. But this is the route that Mercury decided.
Councilman
to go.
Druza.
I just, Mr. Joseph, I just want some clarification on what you said. I'm not going to ask you again about Mercury's responsibility, but is it your testimony that the city is absolved of legal responsibility as a result of Mercury having the legal responsibility over the mailers?
Well, I'm not an attorney, so I don't really know what I'm really not in any position to absolve anyone. I know that when I read this piece and when other people read this piece, that it doesn't run afoul of any of the political partisan language laws that are on the books. I mean, so I'm not, I don't know how else to say, but our intention with this piece was to provide education and information for the people of the city of New Orleans. That was our intention. I believe we hit our goal with that.
I guess my point is, you said you're not a lawyer, which I respect, and I don't want to delve, but you started your testimony with saying that Mercury bears the legal responsibility here.
I didn't
So-
say that Mercury bears.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I don't want to misstate your testimony. I want to use your own words. So please help me use the words that you would say about Mercury's legal responsibility in this instance. I want
As
to make
I've
sure.
stated a few times before, part of what a firm of Mercury's caliber does is that they satisfy all of the needs of the client. Whether it's making sure that what they're producing passes legal muster, passes factual truth and veracity. That's part of what they do. That's why you go out and get this global firm. This is why you go out and get a firm that works with major governments and individuals. It's whenever you bring on someone and you have peace of mind that the job is going to get done, and you bring someone on to paint your house and you know that person's going to paint your house and you don't have to tell them, well, here's the contract that says you have to use this brush. I mean, like you bring on people who are great at what they do and you have faith in that they're going to be able to execute that. And that's why I wanted Mercury. That's why I reached out to Jake, and they produced something for us that achieves the goal that we set out in the beginning.
You used the phrase that part of Mercury's job was to satisfy that the mailers pass legal muster. Does the city have a responsibility to make sure that the mailers pass legal muster?
I believe that we have a obligation to communicate, and the content that's in this mailer is content that we have communicated at many a times. It was content in our State of the City address, in our press releases, in our social media with those same photos. So I think my responsibility is to provide information that is factual, that is truth, that is not coming from a partisan political lens. And that's what this mailer does. And it talks about the progress that the entire city, says it on the front cover, City of New Orleans. And this is our work, your work, our office, the 4,400 employees that call themselves city employees. This is our work. This is our recap. This is what we said we got accomplished for the people, on behalf of the people. And my job is to make sure that we're telling them the truth, that we're telling them exactly what we did. And we're not putting a spin on it, and we're not giving people credit who don't deserve it. We're saying this is all what we got accomplished. And I'm sorry that you think there's some sort of legality or some issue about this or who's responsible or I'm resolving people. I've been doing this for like 30 years, and my whole life is about trying to make and help people better. We just came up on the Ida anniversary and I was looking through my Facebook and I saw all of the photos of the meal program that I helped uplift at the Howland Wolf. We were putting 5,000 people and giving them meals who needed them right after the day after Ida hit. And we did that for 8 days straight. Nobody asked me to do that. I wasn't working for the city and I was trying to get anything over on people. I'm just trying to do my job to help move the city along. And if you don't think I'm good at it, if you don't think I'm breaking the law at it, you think I'm then say it and I'll take whatever licks you want to give me. But to sit here and point fingers and Mercury said this and who said that, and you reading me an email between two colleagues at Mercury.
I guess I'm just trying to ask a simple question, and I appreciate it is a simple question.
It is.
And
it's not a simple answer.
Well, but in fairness, your answer did not answer my question. You talked about communication. You talked about the work you do for the city. You talked about the work that you've done extracurricularly on behalf of the city. I appreciate that. My simple question is, does the city have a responsibility to ensure that the mailers pass legal muster? That's all I'm asking. And if you can't answer that question because you're a lawyer, I understand.
As I said before, I believe our responsibility is to make sure that everything there is factually correct and make sure everything in there is true. Now, I also believe that, yes, I don't know exactly what you're all incurring and referring to in terms of legal muster, but if you're asking me whether or not I have a responsibility to talk to people in a nonpartisan, non-political way when we talk as an office, yes, we don't do that. We never do that. We never stand there and say, vote for the mayor or support the mayor in any of our official communication coming out of our office. We always talk about the work that we're doing, whether it's with another city agency. So yes, I do understand the responsibility of not speaking political when I'm in a public office. And I would never produce anything with public funding that was political in nature.
I appreciate all of that too. But I'm going to ask the question for the third time. And if you answer is, I don't know, that's fine. But I mean, it's
I don't know.
That's okay. Then there we go. All right. Now let me ask you this. What you've said is that Mercury needed to satisfy the needs of the client. One of the provisions that's in the contract is indemnity. Have you or the city sought indemnity from Mercury as a result of the mailer?
I don't know what that means.
Okay. So indemnity is, you say, we're in a contract together. I have been wronged and you owe me as a result of the negligence that you have committed or as a result of some act or omission you have committed. If you're unaware of any letter being sent, that's fine. I just want to know whether or not you're aware of a letter being sent to Mercury saying there's an investigation ongoing. I have to come testify as a result of that. have counsel here with me, I expect that you will either pay for my lawyer or pay as a result of what happens. Are you aware of any such letter?
Absolutely not. I mean, you guys subpoenaed all the information that we had, and I don't remember seeing any letter of that nature. You have all the documents, so I mean, have you seen that letter?
I haven't, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is if I had an indemnity provision in my contract and I was saying the contractor made a mistake, then I would have written a letter to the contractor saying, I expect you to defend me. Now, if your position is I didn't make a mistake, that's fine, but I'm just trying to understand whether or not that's been invoked. If you don't know, that's fine.
I don't know exactly where the question was in that. I mean, I'm not sure who would be saying there was a mistake made.
Well, I would think that you began by saying you expected Mercury to adhere to state law and to local laws.
Yes.
And if there is a potential, and I'm not saying that there is, if there is a potential for a violation and there is risk to the city as a result of that, then Mercury, you have an obligation to either defend or pay us as a result of that potential violation. That's all.
I mean, I think that's more of a question in terms of the contractual. I mean, I think that's a city attorney question. It's
Okay.
not something that would come from me. I mean,
I just, you're the client, as we both are.
well, the
so-
city of New Orleans is a client. The city attorney, if they feel that there was something in that contract, which I didn't write or didn't read or didn't sign, that Mercury didn't live up to, then they should go and send whatever letter it is that you want, or indemnity, or, I mean, yeah, I mean,
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Before we get, I know Councilman Moreno has a question, but a couple of quick follow-ups. The first is, so you don't think this mailer was a mistake? A straightforward question.
No.
Okay. Two, from all the email we have, the only person communicating with Mercury from the city of New Orleans was the communications office. Is that correct?
no, I'm not 100% sure that's correct. I believe there's some emails between Mercury and the procurement office. I believe there's some emails between Mercury and some people in our executive office when they were getting into the brass system. But a majority, mainly the communication between Mercury is between the communications office.
Okay. And you're saying your testimony thus far has been the city is the client, but the only person communicating with Mercury regarding the content of the mailer was the communications office, correct?
On the content of the mailer, correct, yes, because that's our responsibility, content and communication.
Correct. So though the city is the client, the only person communicating regarding the content of the mailer, just to reiterate, I know it sounds redundant, was the communications office.
Yes.
And it's your
Well,
testimony.
you know, let's take a step back on that, actually. The content for this mail piece was generated in a lot of different areas. A lot of it came from the budget meetings that we had with the public and hearing what the public had for priorities and public wanted to see where the progress was in these areas. So, yes, Mercury communicated with the communications office, but we weren't making the decisions on the content in a vacuum. We were
Actually, in the mailers, all the communications, in fact, the final proof of the mailer went to the communications office.
yes, but the content in terms of what is in the mail was a result of listening to the people of the city of New Orleans at the budget meetings and at the ARPA meetings. There were 5 budget meetings and I believe 2 ARPA meetings. And following the debate here in the council about the budget and everything else and the public comments and so forth. So that's where the content came, but yes, it was directed to the communications office.
So it's your testimony that Mercury went to all the budget meetings.
No, we went to all the budget meetings. We were there,
Well,
the communications office.
correct. So my point was, because it seems to be it was getting a little away from the point. The information that was included in the mailer itself was created by Mercury, working with the communications department, and the proofs, the final approval of the content of the mailer was the communications department, correct?
Yes.
Okay. There seems to be a lot of testimony regarding Mercury's culpability as far as their legal responsibility. Is Mercury based in Louisiana?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Is Mercury done any work in Louisiana beyond this interaction with the city of New Orleans?
You would have to ask them.
Okay. Does Mercury have a licensed Louisiana attorney on staff?
You would have to ask them.
Okay. And that being said, because you've said it repeatedly, what is your basis for your faith that Mercury has expertise in Louisiana law? Considering all those previous questions, that they are not from Louisiana, they're not located in Louisiana. You contacted Mr. Delamonte in New York. You knew him from New York.
Yeah.
What were your basis that they knew about Louisiana law or should have known about it?
They're a global firm with a global reputation for being top-notch in political affairs and direct mail and speaking on behalf of local governments. My faith is that.
Okay, that is interesting. So at no point, based on your testimony, during your conversations with Mercury regarding the content or how the mailer was constructed, there was no effort on the city's behalf to forward any of this to the city attorney's office to make sure this was a compliant use of public funds.
The city's attorney's office did not review this piece.
Okay, Councilmember Moreno.
Mr. Joseph, you had mentioned that repeatedly during today's meeting that the purpose of the mailer was to educate and inform the people of the city of New Orleans. Is that correct?
Yes,
So you believe that the pieces that were being sent out purely educational, purely informative, and therefore it is your opinion that they were in compliance with state law?
what pieces are you talking about?
The mail piece,
One piece,
the one piece that was designed?
not pieces, one piece.
Sure. Okay, that piece, you believe that it was in compliance
In compliance with,
state law?
it is.
Okay, that is your assertion. So it was not meant to promote the mayor's administration, to build up support or successes of the mayor or the mayor's administration. It was just purely just educational and informative, and that is it.
Well, I think that's a lot, but yeah, that is it.
Okay. The reason why I bring that up is because if you go to Exhibit A1, which is page 1 of 1, it is the professional services agreement for $15,000 or less. And this is actually the brief description of the needed services from Gregory Joseph dated 01/18/2022. In the brief description, it reads, Mercury will work with Mayor Cantrell's team on developing a comprehensive communication strategy to promote the current administration's successes and reinforce the positive accomplishments of the city departments for year 2022. Mercury will create, produce, and deliver highly targeted direct mail and clear messaging that builds public support and reinforces the messaging coming out of City Hall. Then on page, let's see, we've got another one that says the same thing on the next page, also part of A1, also describing promoting the current administration's successes, builds public support. The brief description remains the same for the 4-5 description, along with the 118 description is the same as the 4-5/2023 description. So that seems to contradict what you're talking about regarding it just being purely educational and informative, because your own description says that it is about promoting and building support for this administration.
Well, I mean, Mercury will create, produce, and deliver highly targeted mail with clear messaging that builds public support and reinforces the messaging coming out of City Hall.
That's coming from you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So seems to be contradictory of what you said
The
earlier, that
communications
it's just
team will work with
educate and
Mercury to
inform.
identify key wins, upcoming projects, and achievements the administration has delivered to the people of New Orleans.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have a person who is, writing a transcript at this very point that we can read back the record. But you just said, maybe a couple minutes ago, that this was not about building support or promoting this administration, but clearly in what you wrote in the brief description about this particular contract, it very much is what it was about.
I don't see that the way that you do, so I'm just gonna let you have your opinion about that. I think that when we're
It's
talking
not really about
about,
my opinion. I'm literally just reading what.
yeah,
what
but
this
I
says.
mean, so none of that information is educational or informational?
It doesn't say any of that in your description.
It
about
does. It says we will identify key wins, upcoming projects, and achievements the administration has delivered to the people of the city of New Orleans. That's information, that's educational, that's the people of New Orleans. It doesn't say that we want this piece to make sure that the mayor, I don't know, gets elected president, or to define the Democratic Party, or to paint one of the, I mean, what we set out to do, again, was produce a piece that provided information and education to the people of the city of New Orleans to talk about the stuff that we all got accomplished. I mean, this is all of our work. This is Councilmember King's work, and Councilmember Green's work, and your work, madam, and your work. I mean, this is all our work.
What you're saying that you set out to do is not what you described as the services that would be provided by Mercury. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, before we get to Councilman Harris, I think it's interesting because you keep saying our work, and this is meant to promote our work. In reviewing the mailer, other than the seal of the city of New Orleans, Mayor Cantrell is pictured 300% more times, 6 times in the mailer. When you talk about our work, the focus of the mailer is Mayor Cantrell, as she has mentioned 300% more than the city of New Orleans, and no other elected official was mentioned whatsoever. So
Looking at this mailer right now, Mayor Cantrell and the Department of Public Works. Mayor Cantrell and our first responders, fire, police, EMS, and healthcare workers. Mayor Cantrell and the Office of Cultural Economy. Repaired more than 6,000 potholes. I mean, that's what is in this brochure. Invested over 5.7 million for new ambulances, rescue vehicles, medical and educational equipment. Where there is a problem, the city of New Orleans solves it. There are pictures of road work projects being done in Councilmember Green's office. There is a bicycle lane that used to exist in Councilmember King's office that's in there. There is a key to the city, just like this one, being handed to the producer of Queen Sugar, who created jobs,
Who's in that picture with it?
and of Duvernay.
Oh, and wait, who's that next to her on the right, on the bottom right?
You don't know?
That's Mayor Cantrell.
Yeah, it
yes,
is.
Mayor
'Cause we
Cantrell.
gave her the key to the city.
That's
She
interesting.
created jobs for the people of New Orleans for 7 seasons. And we gave her the key to the city.
The mayor gave her the key of the city.
The
So you're
city of-
promoting the mayor, you're promoting the mayor
Actually,
giving
I
something.
take that back. It was proclamation. It
Okay,
wasn't-
sorry. Going back to my initial statement and my question, do you believe the city of New Orleans and Mayor Cantrell are synonymous? Is Mayor Cantrell the city of New Orleans alone?
I mean, I believe you should ask her that question. I don't think that's a position for me to answer.
You're the
When
head
I
of,
think of the city of New Orleans, I think of the mayor,
okay, that answers my question. Councilmember Harris.
the mayor,
Okay,
not this mayor, the mayor.
Mr. Joseph, I just want to put this in context as far as timing. What event was happening around this time? Why was this mailer put out when it was?
Well, it was a recap 2022, so it was put out in the beginning of 2023 because that's when you would typically recap the year that was.
Were there any prior mailers sent to recap years past? Or is this the first
I don't
recap?
know. I have only been working in the office for 6 months, so I don't know what happened before my tenure.
So as the
And I've only lived here for 4 years, so I don't know what was going on before I moved to the city of New Orleans.
as the communications director, you've never reviewed what past communications went out.
Not to the point of going back into the archives of past mayors and looking at
I'm
the
not
past
talking about
4
past
years.
mayors,
I
I'm
don't-
talking about Mayor Conchal. I'm talking about this mayor.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd been 4 years since, she started the office. So no, I didn't go back and look at every communication that the city of New Orleans had put out before I started.
So you have no idea whether or not a recap such as this had been put out in prior years?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I can answer that question since myself and Councilmember Jeruso have been here for last term and also this one. There's never been a mailer like this that has been sent out by the mayor.
That's what I thought. Again, what event was happening during the time that this mailer went out? There was a recall happening, correct?
There was a lot happening, yeah.
Was there a mayoral recall that was occurring when this mailer went out?
Yes, there was.
Okay, and I'm looking at Exhibit B1, which is the December 9th, 2022 proposal from Mercury. Did you see a copy of that?
I'm sorry.
I'm going to Exhibit B1, which is a December 9th, 2022 proposal sent by Mercury, and I assume it was sent to you. Did you receive this proposal?
Yes.
And you received it on or about December 9th, 2022.
I don't know the date that I received it, but it's dated December 9th, 2022. So let's just go with that.
Did you review the content of this proposal?
Not really.
Okay, well, let's go to Exhibit B1, page 2, where it says Mercury is recommending a direct mail campaign that establishes the mayor as a credible leader who is dedicated to the city and its future success. Do you remember reading that?
Like I said, I don't really remember reading the proposal, but this is Mercury. Okay, so I mean, Mercury's is putting their words and sending it to me.
And why are they recommending this direct mail campaign? Was it on the urging of you?
Well, I mean, I reached out to Jake. So I don't really understand if they were urging it. I mean, I asked Jake to create a mail for us
Why?
because they're the best.
No, why did you ask him to create the mail piece on or about December 9th, 2022? Not because they're the best. What was the purpose of putting this mailer out?
We had just come through the budget season. We had just come through the ARPA season. There was millions of dollars flowing around the city, and we have an obligation to let the people of the city of New Orleans know where that money is being spent.
So you had no thought in your head to solicit this proposal and send out this mailer because there was a recall happening.
No, absolutely not.
It has nothing to do with anything. Oh, no.
It doesn't.
Okay.
I mean, if you go back and look at anything that we'd said throughout the entire process of the recall, did we ever talk about it? Did we ever mention it?
Why
Is
is
there
it,
any conversation in any of the documents that you have that mention the recall?
why is Mercury recommending a direct mail campaign that establishes the mayor as a credible leader?
I mean, you should ask Mercury why they were saying that. I don't know. I didn't write that. I
Okay.
didn't, so what they're saying and what they're categorizing her, that's a question for them.
And you picked Mercury because they're the best in the business, is that correct?
I picked Mercury because they are very, very good at what they do.
And if you turn to Exhibit B1, page 3, Mercury says, our strength is in prioritizing the most persuasive messages, identifying the most influential audiences, and timing communications correctly to maximize impact and frequency.
Yes, it says that.
Do you remember reading that?
I told you, I don't really remember reading the proposal, but again, it's a proposal from Mercury, by Mercury to me.
And you chose Mercury because their strength is in prioritizing the most persuasive messages, identifying the most influential audiences, and timing communications correctly to maximize impact. They're the best in the business. That's what they do, right? That's why you chose them.
I chose them for a litany of reasons. Yeah.
In this proposal, Exhibit B1, number 5, it says universes and audience segmentation. For our main universe, we recommend a preliminary voter screen of all voters who voted in at least 2 odd-year municipal elections since and including 2017. Do you recall reading that?
I don't remember reading the Mercury proposal. But I
Ultimately,
mean, I'm reading it now, and it's still Mercury's proposal. It's still Mercury's language. It's still Mercury writing this.
so you authorized the contract with the company whose proposal you did not read.
I didn't authorize anything because I don't sign contracts.
Did you request the city to engage Mercury?
I asked Mercury to produce an education informational mail piece that would tell the people of the city of New Orleans exactly what we have done in 2022 and the progress we've made.
Mr. Joseph, are you aware of the city's procurement processes?
Not as well as the people who work in procurement.
Did you go through the regular procurement process in order to have this mail piece produced?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the regular procurement.
How did you authorize payment of Mercury? Walk me through it step by step.
Well, again, I'm not allowed to authorize payment for anyone. We were told by the procurement office that we could enter into what they call, what is it called? A professional services agreement if it was less than $15,000. And that's what we did.
Walk me through step by step. So you reached out to Mercury. Yes,
I texted Jake.
you texted Jake. You received this December proposal, again, during the recall, while the recall was happening. You didn't review the proposal, but you authorized entering into a professional services agreement for these direct mail pieces, or this direct mail piece, because it was only one piece, although other pieces were contemplated.
So do you want me to walk you through it?
I want you to walk me through it step by step.
Okay, so again, I just don't, yeah, I understand it, but I texted Jake And I told them that we wanted to do something that was similar to what they did in Albany.
You mean, according to this December proposal, electing Mayor Adams?
No, in Albany. I had known about the Albany before. They'd won a Polly Award for their work on Albany. That's a political affairs version of the Emmys or whatever. But it was well known within political circles that their work for Albany on behalf of the city of Albany was really well done. And so that was one of the reasons why I knew Mercury was ready to do this. So I reached out to Jake and I said, we want what Albany got. And he put together this proposal and sent it out to me on the 19th. I don't remember the first day I called Jake, but it was probably not more than 10 days before we got this.
Did anybody else review the proposal?
I don't know. I mean, I would have to look at the email chain, but I imagine I sent it to members of my communications office, but I don't really remember who, and I can't really attest to whether or not they reviewed it.
Did you send it to the law department?
It's a proposal.
Did you send it to the mayor?
No.
Okay, continue on. You received the proposal.
I received the proposal and they got to work,
They got to work doing what?
putting together an educational informative piece to tell the people of the city of New Orleans exactly the progress they've made on their behalf.
And how did you ensure that they were paid?
I have nothing to do with that.
Did you
And-
see proofs of the mailer before it was sent out?
Yes, we absolutely saw proofs of the mail.
Who else saw proofs of the mailer before it was sent out?
I believe members of my communications team all looked at the mailer for various proofreading and clarification, choosing a different photo, just making sure that it was in compliance with what we wanted to put out.
Other than your communications team, who else, if anyone, reviewed the proof?
No one.
The mayor didn't review the proof?
No.
Her chief of staff didn't review the proof? And the law department did not review the proof?
No.
Did you ever discuss with anyone using funds from the mayor's campaign fund
No,
to send this out?
absolutely not.
So it was always contemplated that you were going to use city funds to pay for this mailer?
It was never a political piece. So why would I use campaign funds for this?
It's not a
And
political.
why would
piece.
I even have a conversation about using campaign funds in City Hall? Why would I do that? Why
Well,
would I even bring up campaign or funds in City Hall?
again, it was always contemplated that the city of New Orleans would pay for this mailer.
This was a communication from the city of New Orleans.
Councilmember Jeruso?
Before we get to you, I know we're going to focus on procurement in a second. Two quick things. First, if there was an email between yourself and Mr. Damani regarding give me the Albany treatment, we don't have that text message or communication, so please recheck your devices so we can get that over here. One quick follow-up. You said under oath previously that the purpose of this mailer and this engagement had nothing to do with the recall campaign. Is that correct?
Has nothing to do with the recall campaign.
Okay, well, I would direct you to A1, the first appendix F to policy memorandum R, authored by you. And the term of the contract is 12/9/2022 to exactly 2/22/2023. What ended on 2/22/23? That was the end of the recall campaign. So that date just popped into your head? It's completely coincidence.
No, that's $15,000. That's where it ends.
Well, actually, this is 30,000. This was the first one before you split it into two.
Well,
So
we
the
didn't
first-
split anything. It was split from the get-go. But
So there was
We-
never contemplated, well, first off, so this date that on your initial proposal, that states February 22nd, 2023 was coincidentally the last day of the recall. That's your testimony.
well, I mean, on the professional service contract,
Yeah.
that's not signed?
Correct.
Yeah, that's the dates on the unsigned professional service.
So you're
contract,
saying you
Which
didn't,
again,
you
I
didn't-
don't sign.
you didn't draft this?
No,
Who drafted this? Was it drafted by someone in communications?
I mean,
It says from Gregory Joseph.
yeah,
So
so I
either
mean,
this
I
was
did,
for,
I mean, I did write this, but it's
Okay.
not for me, yeah, but it's not. Yeah, I mean, 1209.
says
Yeah.
12/22/2003, and it says from Gregory Joseph to Chief Administrative Officer. Date.
I mean, I'm just gonna. Look, I don't know when the recall ended. I know that the governor said in March it was over. So,
Okay, so this date,
but it wasn't February
2/22/23,
22nd.
it's coincidental. Coincidental.
That it was a date?
If that's your testimony, I take it, Mr. Jeruso.
I actually, and Councilmember Jeruso is giving me the grace to do this. Did you receive a voicemail from Jake Dillamani 5 days after the recall period?
I've received a voicemail from Jake on the 27th of February.
And what did that voicemail say?
Okay, hey, it's Jake. It's about 11 a.m. your time. If you are in fact in New Orleans, I just wanted to follow up on the mail program, see where you guys are at. We still have a few pieces to move. I know the time restrictions no longer relevant here. So I know they're going to not time sensitive, but I want to make sure that you're getting from us what you need. So just give me a shout whenever you get a moment. Thanks.
What time restrictions is he referring to?
You should ask him that. I have no idea what he's talking
So 5 days after the recall, he says in a voicemail to you, I know that time restrictions are no longer relevant. But you have no idea what he's talking about.
I still don't really. The recall ended in March. There is no word recall in this message. There's no, again, 9,000 pages of documents that you guys got from us. Does anyone talk about the recall?
Had you all talked about a time restriction?
No.
So you don't know what time restriction he's referring to in this voicemail?
Out here,
You have no idea.
Ask him what he's talking about. I don't know what he's talking about, but to think that he's talking about something that we never discussed is kind of bizarre.
So he bizarrely is referring to a time restriction that you all had never discussed.
Well, if you look back at the proposal that, you know, you were very focused on, you see that there is a timeline thing in here. You could be referring to that. I don't know. But I don't know.
Okay,
Because I didn't write the email. I didn't write I didn't send the voicemail. I know what he wasn't talking about because we never talked about the recall. I mean,
I'm just reminding you that you were under oath.
yeah, I'm
And you're
I'm
talking
the
about,
only one here under oath. Just remind yourself that as well.
sir. We are trying to be civil with you. And we are trying to get to the bottom of this. And your testimony is that your friend Jake left you a voicemail referencing a time restriction that no longer exists, but you have no idea what he's talking about. Under oath, you're saying you have no idea what he's talking about.
I don't know what he's referring to as a time restriction. All I can sit here and tell you that if you think that the recall was over on the 27th of February, when the governor ended it on the 21st of March, then I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand how anyone would tell me something is over in a non-way being over that's not even over. I mean, it's y'all who put this into the context of the recall. Not me. You're saying this is about the recall and all that. I'm here to tell you that from my position as the Director of Communications for our office, that I never, ever, ever ever considered the recall to be a threat to this office. Never. Not when it started, not when it failed, not the week or month in their lawsuits. Never, never once.
Yeah, just real quick on the date that you're talking about, you know, the recall ended in March and you weren't aware of the 2/22 date. So you're the communications director, so I'm assuming that you follow, you know, Fox 8, WGNO, WDSU,
No, I don't.
WWL, NO.com. You don't follow any of them? You don't read any of the articles? You don't read it? You're the communications director. You do not follow the local media?
I peruse through the clips in the morning, but follow, and I definitely do not watch the news. No.
You do not watch, wow, okay.
Yeah.
That is unique. That is a unique approach to your job. So maybe
Thank you for that.
that is why you may have missed, as you're saying, that every single one of the news agencies that I mentioned repeatedly over and over and over stated. And, you know, I think the general public was made aware that that February 22nd deadline of when the recall ended was out there loud and clear. But you're saying you just never saw it because you don't really follow the media in New Orleans, even though you're the communications director.
Well, I mean, I understand that their recall needs to be verified. The signatures need to be tallied, and then they need to go to the governor. And then when the governor tallies the signatures and sees whether or not they met the threshold.
Everyone knew there was that deadline of February 22nd that all the signatures needed to be turned in.
Actually, I believe that there was a week after that you could either put your name on or take your name off.
No doubt about it, but it was that February 22nd deadline. But you're saying because you don't
Deadline for
follow the
what?
local media.
The
that you
deadline for
didn't-
it to be over?
That was a date to turn in the signatures.
Yes, and there was a week after to take your name and put it off or put it on. And then there was still the counting process.
So you did know about, so now you are remembering all the dates.
Well, I don't have a problem with the dates.
No, so you did know the date.
Told you what the date of when it ended,
Uh-huh.
but you're asking me whether or not I watched the news and got
Well,
this
because
from
you
Fox
said you
8.
really didn't know that it ended on the 22nd, and then you said it ended in March. Look, I'm just trying to get clarification as well, sir. So thank you. I think I received it.
Yeah, okay, good.
All right, I want to move on. I want to move on to procurement and the policies because that's important to me. I realize Julian's here, but I want to ask you too, because, well, Mr. Joseph, this is why I want to ask. Comms is the beneficiary of what happened. And if you don't know the answers to the questions, then you can just tell me that and I'll ask Mr. Julian instead. Let me start with this because I want to make sure I know you have the packet in front of you. Have you generally reviewed the documents that have been produced in the subpoena?
Have I generally reviewed the documents that were,
Produced in response to the subpoena?
you mean what they just gave me here?
And before? with the
Yeah,
state
yeah,
board?
yeah.
Yeah, just want to make sure. All right. So, as the head of the comms department, are you generally familiar, excuse me, with CAO policies?
With,
With CAO policies?
I mean, I would say probably my familiarity with CAO policies is when there is a policy out there that I have to communicate. I don't know all of the policies of the CAO's department, but when he needs or the office needs to communicate something from their policy, that's where my familiarity pretty much begins and ends.
And I would not expect you to know all of them. So, is the law department the responsible party for interpreting city policies and procedures?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Are you aware of any city policy that exists in writing about backdating invoices?
I don't.
Are you aware of any unwritten city policy about backdating invoices?
Unwritten? I mean, I don't know of any written or unwritten, spoken or unspoken policy. Yeah.
And are you aware of communications about backdating invoices as it results to the single piece of mail?
Can you say that? Sorry.
Sure. Are you aware of any emails about backdating invoices related to this mail piece?
I mean, I don't know all of the emails. I did review this, but there's a lot of emails from the procurement office to the Mercury people that I would have been CC'd on just because it's our project, but I don't know what they told them or what they didn't tell them.
And
I
if
mean, that's why Julian is here, because he can clear up all of that information.
okay. Let me ask you about this. If I wanted to find a written policy that allows any city department to override a decision by the law department, I have to ask Julian about that.
Override
The law department. So,
any,
yeah,
I don't know.
okay.
I mean,
And the reason, look, putting all my cards on the table, the reason I'm asking is about Exhibit C5, where the law department says, I don't have a comfort level with separating the two agreements, as same appear to merely, and I think they mean B, a mechanism to circumvent the city's procurement rules. Let's plan to discuss our contracts team meeting. That's the law department. It is Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 at 11:52 a.m. It is to Austin Wiltie. You are copied on it as well, along with Andrew Gregorian and Mary Pettingill. And then procurement says that comes up with a different way to do it. So what I'm just curious is whether or not you're aware of a policy. I'll let you read it first before asking a question.
I'm sorry, Councilman, is there a page on the bottom?
I mean,
This one is particularly small.
yeah, it's small. I'm sorry, the copy we have is
That's okay, no, I
equally
understand.
small too. I have page 813,
Okay,
Ms. Lasky, of 930 as the email from Ms. Tyler. And then Mr. Meyer's response is on page 811. We got the same size, so.
I know, exactly. That's okay.
so I see what the email from Tracy to Austin that we're CC'd on. I don't have a comfort level with separating two agreements as same appear to be merely a mechanism to circumvent the city's procurement rules.
Yeah,
So this is the time where I guess I tell you to hold my beer, right? Earlier in this email thread, it's an email from Julian to Austin. It says, good afternoon. This is on the bottom of page 811, Exhibit C5. Again, this email from Tracy is in January 30th at the end of the month. Piece had already been out then. Good afternoon, Austin.
wait, the email from Tracy is January 10th.
I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
the record's
sorry,
clear,
10th.
that's all.
All right.
And Julian replies.
Julian
17 days
replies
later.
on the 27th. Good afternoon, Austin. My direction to Greg, that's me, even though I'm Gregory. I won't hold it against you though. In December, relayed to Leslie this week, was indeed to enter into a PSA for this month, for the month of December 22, for the maximum 15,000. To comply with this policy in place, the one that you reference, his office will do another PSA, public services agreement, for the $15,000 max. For the 1 year max in 2023. Beyond 15K, we will need to release an RFP. So that's the procurement office conversation that I had in December, telling us we can do 15,000 in 2022, we do $15,000 in 2023. I apologize that the contract was written wrong the first time. It's not the first time that something is written wrong and you review it and you go, no, it's not supposed to be this date, or it's not supposed to be this, or it's supposed to be a comma there. But I was told by our procurement office that we could do two for $15,000, and that's what I did. And yeah,
I'm not arguing, I just want to be clear. I'm not arguing about what happened, Mr. Joseph. All I really want to know is are you aware of a city policy where one city department can override, veto what the law department has said?
I don't know if I didn't know there's anything like that exists.
Okay. And do you have any evidence of it happening before or since this mail piece?
Of the law department overriding a city?
Of two contracts,
agency?
good point. I wasn't clear enough. Of two contracts being split in order to meet the procurement thresholds?
Oh, I don't work in procurement, so I don't,
You don't know. Okay, I'll save those questions for Mr. Julian. Thank you. For Mr. Meyer.
Any other questions? Council President, did you have another question?
I appreciate your time being here today. I think any questions I would have had, I think you sort of answered over and over again. So appreciate you here and you are dismissed
thank you.
from today. Mr. Meyer? Anita, Katie, your client left his notes. Why don't you take those with you? I don't want you to leave those on the desk. I think he might have marked on those. I just don't want them to be laying around.
Okay.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Meyer, for being here today.
Good morning, council.
Well, I do believe some of my colleagues have much more involved procurement questions, but I'll begin with a very simple one. Based upon the emails we've obtained, there was an interaction between, and you were involved tangentially in the interaction between Mr. Joseph and the city attorney's office that expressed concern about breaking a $30,000 contract into two separate $15,000 contracts to circumvent procurement code. I guess the first question was, in order for you to opine, you were aware the original contract was for $30,000, correct?
No,
You were not aware. So at what point did Mr. Joseph approach you in regarding advice on how to split up contracts or advice to get something that was perhaps in the RFP land down to the non-RFP land?
so early December, I had a meeting with Mr. Joseph in Mr. White's office, who was asking for advice on how to hire a consultant, marketing consultant, and purchase flyers. The meeting was not set up on how to not do an RFP. The meeting was set up on how do I hire a marketing consultant and how do I purchase flyers.
Okay,
So that was the meeting in early December, during which I explained to Mr. Joseph that consulting services be considered professional services. According to our rules, the threshold is 15,000. So depending on the budget that you have, you can either do a professional service agreement up to 15, but if you have more, you need to do an RFP.
okay, I guess I'm confused because on the email interaction in which you opined and the city attorney expressed concern about the $30,000 amount being in the RFP realm, you appeared to pop in to say, well, this contract could be broken into two $15,000 contracts.
And that's why I'm here to bring you context. because
Okay.
You're referring to emails from January
Correct.
of 2023. I met with Mr. Joseph in December 2022 before I left on vacation. During that meeting, I was asked, how do I hire a consultant and how do I purchase flyers? At that time, the information that was provided was, what are my options? And so
Right.
options that I gave to him is that for marketing consultant, the threshold is 15,000. If it's under 15, there's no competition, you can select who you want to hire for a contract for 15. If your budget is above that amount, then you need to do an RFP.
Okay, so in your opinion, hypothetically, if you had a contract where you negotiate with a third party for $30,000, it would be inappropriate to backdate half of it to 1 year and to remove the other part to the next year so that it is a $30,000 contract is broken into two basically fake $15,000 contracts to circumvent the procurement requirement. That would not be appropriate.
So in the context of this contract with Mercury, what happened was presented, what was presented to the law department in January
Right.
did not correspond to the
meeting in
direction
December.
that I gave to Mr. Joseph at the beginning without any details of that transaction. Just how do I do this?
That makes tremendous sense. So if your point in December was, if that contract is over 15, it has to be RFP. If it's below 15, it can be professional services. So basically, if you want to hire someone professionally, it has to be under 15 or below.
The policy tells us that under 15, you can have a contractor during a fiscal year, no competition required.
So for clarification, just because I think we both understand procurement. If I negotiate a contract in January with a party for a $30,000 contract, it would be inappropriate to take a January contract, backdate 15,000 to the previous year, and then have an additional $15,000 contract for the next year where all of the exact information is the same to circumvent procurement.
So if this contract comes to my office through Brass and
Right.
submitted for approval, that would be a red flag
Red
that I would
flag.
investigate and ask the department why you didn't do an RFP, where this is coming from. It may be that they did an RFP, but didn't attach the document. So that would be part of my investigation.
That's my questions. Mr. Druso has a question?
Well, I think the follow-up to that is we can agree that the mail piece was a single item. It wasn't like we're in other words, it was supposed to be one mail piece for $30,000. Is that right?
I don't know anything about the details of the work that was asked Mercury. Back in December, I was asked how to procure a consultant, how to buy flyers.
So
Everything that you're referring to came later in January of 2023, all the information through emails. I don't know any of the specific at the time when I was asked.
all right, so I just want to make sure, Mr. Meyer, I understand. So in other words, you're asked hypothetically, how do we make sure that we comply with the rules? But you weren't given any details about what the service being offered was or how it was going to be used.
I was not.
Let me, and now I feel like I do want to ask these questions about the policies because it's important. And my concern has been about other things that have happened. Am I right? The law department is a responsible party for interpreting city policies and procedures?
I don't know.
Who would know? Because now I have two, your comms tells me they don't know. You tell me you don't know. Who does know?
I don't know if it's like mentioned in the charter that's their part of their responsibility or not. But as a policy that would apply to procurement, and our procurement is done, law department will work with whoever is at the head of that office overseeing this process to understand how to interpret the rule.
Would you agree that it would be problematic if departments can consistently override legal advice provided by the lawyers for the city?
Ultimately, the law department approves for formal legality.
Right.
And so in order for them to approve a contract, they would have to agree as to what is a contract, what it says, and would reject if it's not compliant.
I understand, but my question is, would you agree that it'd be problematic for departments to override the legal advice provided by the lawyers for the city?
As generic your question is, I would say yes.
Yes, okay. So here, you know that I went through the emails with Mr. Joseph. Mr. Joseph read aloud the email from Tracy Tyler on January 10th that said, I'm not comfortable breaking this up into two separate pieces. You replied 17 days later. At that point in January, were you still unaware about the mechanisms of the mail piece?
What do you mean by mechanism?
Well, in other words, you said in December, all you were told is, how do I get to a point where procurement can happen for a professional service contract without an RFP. True?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Sure.
I was ahead of your.
It's all right. I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page and I'm not trying to trick you. When you met with Mr. Joseph and with Mr. White in December, they were asking you, in your view, hypothetically, how does one accomplish a personal service contract without an RFP process?
Yeah, Mr. Joseph needed guidance on that, yes.
Right. And so your guidance was that if it's $15,000 or less, then you don't need to go through an RFP process.
Correct.
Then, now we fast forward a month. We have the law department in January 10th saying, I don't, and I want to read this because I think here the words are important. Of course, I lost my copy. Here it is.
Can you tell me the page number?
Yeah, sure. It is page 813, exhibit C5. And again, Mr. Meyer, same thing I told Ms. Lasky and Mr. Joseph. Our copies have the words as small as you do. So we're not doing it to try and trick your eyes. Page 813 of 930, exhibit C5.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Ms. Tyler writes, Austin, I do not have a comfort level with separating the two agreements, as same appear to be merely a mechanism to circumvent the city procurement rules. Let's plan to discuss during our contracts team meeting. So I guess my question to you is, between January 10th and when you responded on January 27th, did you learn anything specifically about the mail piece?
No,
So your response on January 27th is only about the general advice that you had given to Measures, Joseph, and White back in December.
yes, because what was presented to the law department was an agreement for 30,000 going from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2023. So what was presented to the law department and as a contract, I mean, a package, I didn't see it, but that's what I understood that was presented to them. Being told to break it down into two would logically raise a red flag to them as to what this email is about.
Well, and then I think more importantly to me is the words as a mechanism to circumvent the city's procurement rules. So did that raise an additional red flag for you in considering this?
The contract was not presented to me. What the law department got is not what I talked to Mr. Joseph in December.
I understand that.
And so back in December, I told him how he could do professional service agreement. And then if his budget was over 15, the policy comes into play to say you could do a contract for 2022 and a contract for 2023.
I agree with all that. I guess my point now is, here we are weeks later in January, where the law department, the lawyers for the city, are raising a flag. And they're saying, hey, this looks like attempt to circumvent city policy. And really what it seems like they're saying is, this is a way to always avoid an RFP process if you can break the contract into two when it's for a single purpose. So my question is, what did you do to educate yourself on the concerns the law department is raising here?
I contacted Ms. Tyler.
Okay.
To explain to her where I came from with that meeting in December, as most likely the mayor's office was telling them, well, we just wrote the contract wrong and we just need to split it, having no context as to probably what they said, what the procurement office said we could do it. Then that's why I referenced having a conversation with Ms. Tyler in my email at the end of January.
Do you consider this a lesson learned in having better communication between the law department and procurement in terms of contracts not being broken into two different parts?
It's a lesson for the department to include both of us in the conversation. At some point, department comes to me on a regular basis, asking me for advice. If I know that something's gonna take place, I would typically relay that information to the department so they're aware it's coming their way, because ultimately they're the one drafting the contract and approving for form and legality. But sometimes it just remains a conversation. I don't know where it goes after sometimes.
All right, so what I hear you saying is the comms department kept procurement, you in the dark.
I was not in the dark. On December 8th, I left on vacation to visit my family in Europe. I came in January, the second day of returning to the office. So I have no idea what happened. So I can't say they kept me in the dark. I just wasn't there.
Well,
I have
okay.
no communication about it.
Well, you did not have they did not supply you with the information that you might have wanted to understand completely a decision. I'm not trying to make it malicious. All I'm saying is you didn't know and they didn't provide you the information.
Correct, but the natural step for the department is to get with the law department to draft a contract and route it.
Right. But again, if you don't know that the rule is being circumvented and you have just a little piece of the puzzle, all those puzzle pieces need to figure together in order to have a complete picture.
Correct, that's why we have to have a meeting or conversation to discuss all of it.
Okay. I asked Mr. Joseph, I ask you, are there any city policies that allow city departments to override decision by the law department?
I'm not aware of any.
All right. Are you aware of any city policies that allow backdating of invoices?
Not aware of any.
Are you aware of any backdating of invoices that have occurred other than with respect to the relevant mail piece here?
I'm not aware of it.
Are you aware of any other contracts being broken into separate pieces, professional services other than this one?
Yes, I am, but the reason why I know and it exists, splitting a purchase is prohibited. However, there could be legitimate business justification for doing it.
Okay, so explain, please give me the concrete answer.
Sure. So splitting of a purchase is a prohibition that has been in interpretation by the Attorney General of a specific statute under public bid law. Several opinions relayed by the Louisiana Legislative Auditor on their website as to you're not supposed to split a purchase. However, as the AG and the LLAs relayed, there could be a legitimate reason to do so.
Right.
So for example, you may have to make an HVAC repair and you may just have funding this year to do a piece of it. And you want to phase it out because you don't have all the money. Maybe your budget hasn't been approved to buy the additional pieces. You're waiting for that additional piece to maybe you purchase the equipment this year and you may do the installation next year because you don't have the money yet. So breaking down this purchase is legitimate because you limited by the funding that you have.
But that wasn't the case here.
Correct. So we have other departments that do professional services under 15 for just 1 year. And it could be based on the fact that they just have a need that year to hire this consultant. They may not need it later on. So for example, I hire a consultant, Ms. Gould, to provide customer service training to my office. I don't know if I'll need her in the future, but I just did a $15,000 contract. Other departments have, NOPD has done a $15,000 contract in the past. When I started at the city over 10 years ago, they were hiring under a $15,000 contract, a vet for the horses. And then at some point got the direction from the city attorney because they've done that multiple years, where it's the time to do an RFP. So they did an RFP. They followed our recommendation to do an RFP because at the time I was in the law department. They hired the same firm. They only had one proposal. And eventually the contract ran out and they were allowed to continue with 15 because there was only one vendor who could do it and they needed it. So there's a legitimate business justification to do that one at a time.
Business justifications and contract.
Yes, because yes. And again, it's not splitting. The policy allows you to do one contract for $15,000 every fiscal year.
But it was
There was one need. There was one need for hiring this firm for marketing services during just that time. That was the reason was given that there would not be another procurement afterwards. So I still needed to advise to them that if they do a 15 in 2023, once they use the 15, they need to do an RFP after.
right. But given that this was proposed for January, that it was for $30,000 and for a single purpose, and there isn't a reason of money being unavailable or another justification legally, then you're unaware of any exceptions to the rule.
The policy 8 allows to do a professional services agreement during that fiscal year for 15. That's the legal justification that allows you to do a contract per year.
I get that.
That's based on that. That's what I told Mr. Joseph.
Right.
It's gonna be above the 15. I'm in December. If hypothetically you pursue the idea of hiring a consultant, you could do a 15 in December and another 15 in January.
So
It's a different fiscal year.
I understand that, but I guess my point is, it's the whole thing for one mail piece is $30,000. So you're allowing it to be split between 2 different years in order not to invoke the RFP.
What they presented to the law department, what you're reading about those emails, is that in global purchase that they made.
Right, but it's $30,000. It's an in globo 30,000. It's not a 15, it's not 1501, it's 30,000. Yeah, yes or no? 30,000, yes,
What was presented in January, yes,
yes.
contain a reference to $30,000.
Because, and it was the same in December, Mr. Meyer. It was 30, in fact, it was $30,000 in December at the same time. So what happened here was it was split into 2 separate pieces so it could be in 2 separate fiscal years in order that it would meet the $15,000 threshold. Correct?
That's not what I told them in December.
But that,
how to do
I'm
it.
not saying that's what you told you. I'm saying that's what happened. Difference. That's what
That's what
happened.
they routed to the law department.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Good afternoon. I want a couple of follow-up questions to what Councilmember Jeruso just talked about. And it has to do with the contract. First, are you an attorney? Are you a lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
You are, okay. We've been trying to figure out who's a lawyer and who's not from the different witnesses. And obviously you are the head of the contracting department for the city.
I'm the head of the Office of Procurement. The contracting is within the city attorney's
Sure,
office.
yeah, but you're the main procurement guy, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Is it proper to authorize work when a contract hasn't been executed yet?
No, it's not.
So this goes back to Councilmember Jeruso's line of questioning because, obviously you had the conversations with Mr. Joseph in your office about hiring, but clearly work had already begun according to the emails that we're seeing and when the mailer was sent prior to the execution of a contract. Can you think of anything so emergent that there would need to be some type of educational mailer sent out without the execution of a contract first?
I don't know about the part about your question about the mailer, as I'm not familiar with other contracts in that context, even though nor just release an RFP for marketing services, but I don't think it's related to getting mailer. But I do tell all the vendors that I meet during my presentation, do not provide goods and services before you get a purchase order or written contract. And it goes both ways. The city may ask to execute and get the goods or services, but the vendor should not be doing it either. Because you have not have any approval that this work has been approved, whoever needs to approve it. And you put yourself at risk to have your payment delayed.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of the interesting piece there as to, how potentially the contract ultimately was broken up because they had started potentially work in December, but they didn't have a contract executed yet. And then they did additional work, I guess, maybe in January. I just think that this has all been, very bizarre as to how it was all handled and procured. And to that point, when you had your initial meeting with Mr. Joseph in December, And he had talked to you about wanting to do this type of communication. When he talked to you about procuring a firm, did he talk to you about procuring just one specific firm or a firm in general?
I don't recall.
And when you spoke to him, did you also get him to recognize that there are many types of firms throughout the city and state and region who do this type of work? The only reason why I mentioned that is because I know that you all are very cognizant of the, sole provider type of situation. You all are very strict on that. And I know that this is a $15,000 contract, but did you also advise them of that, of the variety of different firms that could potentially do this work?
I don't recall if I did or not. I know that typically, I tell departments in situation where I release the magic word, no competition is required, they tend to not listen to an expert, but I do refer them to the certified DBE list, contact the Office of Supply Diversity to see if they can reach out. We have the ability to provide them information through BRASS that all the suppliers that I've selected to be a marketing consultant assistant, but I don't recall if I referred him to look at a pool or information.
Would you agree that there's many, many firms who could do a mail piece throughout the city and region, state?
I agree that in the marketing field, there's plenty competition.
Yes. Thank you.
Councilman, as before we get to you, I have two quick follow-ups that are timely. The first is, you mentioned the typical process, such as you have a proposal. That proposal goes through procurement and the law department to make sure it meets procurement requirements, and law department looks for legality. From what we saw today, and this is really to reiterate what Councilman Moreno just said, you're not supposed to begin work until procurement and the law department sign off on a contract, and that contract is perfected, correct?
I'm going to answer your question two ways, meaning that I don't always get the proposal.
Okay.
Like a professional service agreement under 15 department, anybody can decide to get a proposal from somebody, and then at some point they put it in a routing process. Well,
Where you see it.
I may see it, but what the trigger is going to be, like, if it says 15, then that triggers my review is like, was it procured, or was it procured, et cetera. But to answer the last part or the main part of your question, to be able to provide services or goods to the city, you need to have a purchase order, a written agreement that has to be approved by all necessary approvers, whether it could just, obviously it could be my department, the law department are involved in that process.
And I know you were here for when testimony was provided previously, but is it problematic when the law department has questions about an item and the contract is not signed, and yet the item is already in the field and the service is already done?
Yes.
Okay. As the head of a department and you were in law, are you supposed to be aware of what CAO memorandums are if you're heading a department? I mean, our staff is not even under the CAO and we get the memorandum. So is ignorance of CAO memorandums a defense? Yes or no?
I don't know how to answer the question. Depends. I mean, I'm more aware of the policy that applies to my practice and what we do, that if I've made aware of the policy when I first hired.
Oh.
As issues or question may come up, that's where I find out some policy.
And if there's a question, typically, because you were in law, you go to law then and ask the question, right? Or you look for guidance from a third party if you don't understand the question.
Yes.
And no department, no matter what procurement process you're going through, whether it's under 15 or above, you cannot sole source authorize that without law ultimately signing off on it.
They are responsible to approve for formal legality at the end.
And as a former member of the law department, can any vendor absolve the law department of its legal responsibility to review a contract to make sure the contract is legal? Can a vendor say, no law, you don't have to check the law, we're gonna indemnify you if anything we're doing violates state law, don't worry about reading our contract? Is that possible? If the city's signing a contract?
Can you, respectfully, can you repeat? I'm sorry.
Okay, how about this way? If a vendor is gonna provide a service, part of the reason why we have this process, where whether it's below 15 or above, law has to sign off on it. Is there any universe in which a vendor can tell the law department, you don't need to read our contract, we got this covered, just sign it?
The state?
The state can do that, but can a private vendor do that?
Most likely not.
Okay,
That I know.
and if public funds are spent and they're misappropriated based upon a contract that allows for misappropriation, does it absolve the city of any responsibility?
No.
Okay, that's all. Councilman Harris. Councilwoman Harris.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Do you recall when the conversation occurred with, Mr. Joseph?
The beginning of December, as it was close to me departing on vacation. I can't remember the exact date.
And who else was in the meeting? Can you just describe the meeting? Who was in the meeting?
Mr. White, myself, Mr. Joseph. I don't know if the chief of staff was there or not, but
And can you recall what was said? Because we haven't quite gotten to the question that was asked to you. We sort of put words in your mouth, but I want you to describe who asked you what?
sure, Mr. White told me that I need to come to his office to meet with Mr. Joseph, who needed an advice on how to procure, again, a marketing consultant and purchase a mailer.
Okay. And you replied $15,000.
So I said, because there are two pieces
Yeah.
for the meeting. For the mailer, I said, I believe we have a city contract with Empress. We should look into that to see if the specification of that contract, and I told the department, Mr. Joseph, to get information with Empress to see if the specs of that contract allow for that vendor to develop whatever he needed. Because again, flyer means nothing to me. It's just like, you've got to look at the specs, the scope of work of the contract to see if that applies or not. On the consultant side, I said, as I always remind my departments, $15,000 is a threshold. So we in early December, you could do a contract now for 15. If you go above 15, you're looking at doing an RFP. Conversation, Mr. Joseph said more likely it's going to be more than 15. So I said, well, you could do a 15 in December, and you can do a 15 in January, as the policy allows to do one contract, one professional service contract per fiscal year.
Did anybody describe to you the content of the mailer?
No,
Did anyone describe to you the purpose of the consultant?
I was just told it's in the context of the recall.
Can I get you to look at Exhibit C1, please?
Could you tell me the page if I can? Right, it's not assembled all together in the right orders. It's
Adam-
gonna be tricky.
Adam, can you help locate C1 for Mr. Meyer?
I think at the end of it. Is it Julia Zuckerman, the header of the document?
Yes, it should be an email dated Tuesday, December 6th, 2022 from Jake Delamy to Carolyn Riggs from Mercury. Do you see that?
December 6th, yeah, from Jake to Karen. Okay, yes,
And you're not on that email. I want to be clear that this is not an email that you received unless you've seen this email before.
what was provided for this investigation?
Okay. December 6th, 2022, would that have been around the time that you had this meeting with Mr. Joseph and Mr. White?
I remember that it's very close to my departure date, so I was not happy with that meeting. So it could be around that time, yes.
Okay, and when was your departure date? Do you remember?
December 8th.
Okay, so it could have been around December 6th. I just want to read some passages from this email from Jay Delamy to Carolyn Riggs. If you get to the third paragraph, the comms director for the mayor of NOLA called and wants a proposal from us. He wants us to get the business and hasn't gone to anyone else. So he says this is pro forma, but we still need to make it look good. If you'd seen an email like this and received the 2 procurement requests, would you have approved them? Would this sentence have raised a red flag in your minds? If you'd seen this email?
Not necessarily, because there's attachment to it, so I don't know what they contain or what refer to it. Just don't-
Okay, that's fine. If you go to the 5th paragraph, the client is the mayor in her official capacity, not her campaign. They don't want the mail to be 100% campaign style spiffy. They want it to maintain some level of government newsletter style, but still look good. So that jives with what you were told, is that this was for marketing purposes, correct?
It didn't go into that level of details. It was just like, I need to hire a marketing consultant.
Okay, if you turn the page, the second page of this email, A, it says 12 to 13 flights working backwards from the February 22nd recall election. 2 per week, 4 weeks, January 23rd, January 30th, February 6th, February 13th. So that all contemplated that these mailers would go out in 2023, correct?
The
And then 1 per week in January up to week of January 16th, but then they also refer to 1 flight week of 12/26 and 12/19. So that would have been in 2020.
yes.
Do you know if any work was provided by this marketing company in 2022 other than a proposal?
I don't know for sure.
Did you, and again, I think Councilmember Morrell asked you this, but I want to be clear. You never received the January 2023 proposal from Mercury.
I had no communication with Mercury other than being copied on emails from the law department and the communications office.
Okay, thank you.
One quick follow-up. You mentioned previously that there was a mention of the recall in that meeting. Do you know who made that mention? So that only you, Mr. White, and Mr. Joseph were in the meeting. Obviously, you didn't bring up the recall. So you remember contextually who brought up the mailer in the context of the recall?
I don't recall.
So it was either Mr. White or Mr. Joseph,
Right, yes.
but they were both in the room at the same time with you.
Yeah, when we talked about the advice that was given, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll go to the next item on the agenda. Unless any member has any follow-up questions for this moment. All right. For those of you who are following, at the end of this meeting, we will be recessing the meeting until Tuesday. Miss Leslie Thomas was not available, so we'll recess this meeting at the end to bring her in on Tuesday at 1 p.m. So, but that concludes our discussion regarding the mailer for this time. We have some confirmations that we have to do. Oh, I'm sorry, we have public comments on this. I apologize. Can I get those? Oh, there you go. All right. While we start with Mr. Parker.
No.
You left? Okay. Miss Ford.
No.
Okay, Mr. Ford, you got 2 minutes.
As usual, I want to thank the council for your investigation into this issue. And it is clear that it helps me being here as a citizen. I encourage all citizens to come down as well, because it's stuff like this that makes me feel like the crime that we face in our community, we don't have a chance to even deal with that when these kind of appearances of shenanigans are going on. And it wastes our time, it wastes our taxpayers' time. But the reason I'm coming up here today is because of frivolous lawsuits that the taxpayers of this community continue to be involved in, continue to be where we suing ourselves because of the behaviors of our administrative leadership up here. And we deserve better than that. We deserve better than that. And I think that, me personally, I think that the communications chair should have been let out of here in handcuffs today. I really do. I think that the law should be ready to go and arrest him, because it's malfeasance of all of these dollars in the city that clearly could benefit the homelessness issues that we face in this community, the crime that we face in this community. This is, and we that's why we signed that agreement to oversee who the mayor is appointing, because of these kind of behaviors right here. People who come up here and can clearly say that they are not aware of the what's happening in the local media here, but they're aware of rural news. I want to know if they saw where the state took over the city government in Jackson for behavior quite similar to this. We got to do better, because we're gonna lose it all. They're gonna mess it up for everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. We appreciate you. Next up, we are going to appointments. The first up, we have Mr. John G. Boyd to the Central Business District Historic District Landmarks Commission. That's a mouthful. Come on down. You can speak right there at that podium right there. Yep, that one right there. All right, this is a appointment that is brought at the behest of Councilman Harris by request. I'll begin with the question I give everyone. Why do you want to do this?
Well, I've served for 19 years. And what got me involved was after Katrina, as we all know, the city was on its knees and participated in cleanup on Canal Street, that sort of thing. And the chamber approached me and said, why don't you get involved with the preservation side of architecture in the CBD? That we had a lot of outside investors, which that's positive, but they weren't necessarily sensitive to our culture and to our architecture. And I'm not an architect, but I am part of the hospitality industry. And I felt like this was a way to give back to the community my concerns with making sure that we maintain the character of the city in the CBD. And you know, the most positive aspect of it is it kind of assists developers with conforming to our concepts, our culture, whether it's architecturally, of course, and what we're looking for and what we present through the hospitality industry to the outside world.
All right, Councilman Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd, for your service and continued service. I'm going to go ahead and move. I need a second. Councilmember Jeruso.
Moved and seconded. Please vote your machines. That is 5 yeas, no nays. You are confirmed, Mr. Boyd. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Boyd.
Thank you.
Approval to the full council.
Thank you.
You'll be on the consent calendar.
Already.
Next up, we have Mr. Alice Glazer for the Downtown Development District. You saw the memo. Just why do you want to serve on the Downtown Development District?
Thank you, council members. We need good people in the city to step up and good citizens in the city to step up. Some of my mentors in the city have really encouraged me to get more involved lately, and I feel like this is a good opportunity for me to do so.
All right, Councilman Harris.
I just want to make it clear that Alex and I have known each other for many, many, many years since we were baby lawyers, and I have the highest respect for him personally and also professionally. So I'm happy to make this nomination. So I'll go ahead and move. Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. Rent your machines. 5 yeas.
No nays. All right. Next up, we have Miss Patrice Santino. She's not here. Did you provide the appropriate information regarding a deferral or an excuse?
No, I did not. So.
Okay, why don't we
it
just
was-
defer this to the next meeting?
Oh, okay.
We'll defer to the next meeting. It's fine.
They have school.
Okay, that's fine. We'll defer us to the next governmental affairs meeting. So next one up, we have Ms. Devette.
Just the one on Tuesday.
We could do Tuesday if she can make herself available on Tuesday. We could take her up on Tuesday.
Okay, I'll reach out to her. And
Reach
find
out to her and let my staff know, hopefully today, just so we can meet the agenda for Tuesday.
Okay, got it.
So, thank you. Next up, we have Mrs. Vet Hester. And that is for the Industrial Development Board.
Good morning, council. I'm Yvette Hester. I'm currently the executive director for the Housing Authority of New Orleans. And it's my pleasure to be nominated to serve on this board. I have over 30 years of affordable housing experience. And I think that the experience that I have accumulated over the years will help advance the mission under IDB.
Okay. Anyone on this one? Okay, I'm sorry. No, it's not mine. It's Freddie's. I was trying to move it along.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Ms. Ford would like to provide public comment. 2
I'm
minutes.
sorry, who nominated Ms. Hester?
That is a by request, so it would be the mayor nominated Ms. Hester. And since Ms. Hester resides in Mr. King's district, he is the individual who's the author of it, but the request is from the mayor's office.
Okay, because I want to know if this council recalls when the community was down here with Miss Jasper about her being kicked off the board of the housing authority right around the time that the mayor appointed her security guard to the Hanover board. And we as a community are having big issues with Hanover right now and trying to stop Miss Hester's reign of terror. Hello? Can y'all hear me up there, council members? Because this is so critical. When this community bands together to stop somebody that's behaving badly with it, especially the issues that we're facing right now in housing. Have you looked at the employment roles of how many Hanover employees have walked away from their positions or been terminated because of the way that we've been treated? And we have some things that's going to be coming up in the press very soon about it. So I'm asking you to put this on hold and not appoint Ms. Hester right now until we can finish our community investigation around what's happening at Hanover right now. Now, I'm not asking you to take her off because that's your right if you want to appoint her, but I also like to work closely with this council, and we also have to be about doing what's right in our community. And right now, Ms. Hester has shown that she has no respect for the citizenry in this community. She has not been transparent about what's happening over there at Hanover, and we are working on pursuing those allegations we are investigating right now. And we're going to be asking our local news media as well as you guys as well to be a part of that process. But please do not promote bad behavior in this community.
Councilman King before Mr. Batiste wants to speak, but I think Councilman King.
I'll let Mr. Beck.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Batiste.
How y'all doing? Now I support Mike Backner's getting on the board. I'm gonna get that out of the way. But I'm down here to speak about Miss Hester too. And y'all know I come with the truth. And in 2 weeks, y'all give me 2 weeks. I'd like to meet with all y'all council members, you too, Eugene. I'd like to meet with y'all to show y'all what Miss Hester has done. I got the black and white proof. And Miss Hester should not be put on this board. Hanover is at a disgrace. She bully the people. She bully the people that staying in the houses, you know, and I'm coming with it real. So I'd like to meet with all you council people in 2 weeks and show y'all. I'm just asking y'all. Now, y'all got a right to appoint her, but I want to bring the proof to y'all and let y'all see what Miss Hester has done. It's a disgrace. It's a shame. And my thing is, why y'all don't put more community people on these boards? You know what I'm saying? giving the community something to sit on the board, but y'all gonna do Miss Hester that when she sat here and did what she did to Miss Jasper. And Eugene, you had to get on a guy, the big heavy set. I don't mean to call him heavy set, the one with the chain. Say Miss Jasper started a riot and all that, you know, and I take my hat off to you from doing that, because you put a mathematics question on him when you said the lady with the chains. But at the end of the day, I'm just asking y'all to give me 2 weeks and come see what we got and to meet with y'all and show y'all about Miss Hester. Thank y'all, but make sure y'all put Mike back there wherever, because I'm gonna be raising some sand down here if y'all don't. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Baptiste. Can you please make sure that you fill out a card just because you commented? All right, thank you, sir. Councilmember King.
Sure. So we have a meeting set for Tuesday. If y'all could, we get a meeting before for Tuesday. I'd like to move with this by next Tuesday. If we can give y'all until then to meet with the council. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and
But you
determine.
know, she was the one who said that Miss Jasper was just as bad as the insurrection that happened in Washington, D.C. If y'all remember that comment she made, right?
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Ms. Hester is going to be deferred until next meeting. Let's move on to the next appointment. That would be Sheree Teamer, Ms. Teamer,
I'm sorry.
to the Industrial Development Board.
Miss Teamer too. I'm with her because she's doing some good work. I'm sorry. I didn't know she was in the house.
Ms. Teamer, why would you like to serve on the Industrial Development Board?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, council member. I'd like to serve on the Industrial Development Board because it gives a great opportunity to partner with businesses, entrepreneurs, and really give them some additional help and support while they're trying to develop their whatever developments they're trying to do. And I've already done a lot of exciting work with them so far, and I'm excited to see things like Six Flags and some other projects through fruition.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for Ms. Teamer? I'll go ahead and move. Councilmember Green has seconded. All in favor? Thank you for your service and continued service.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
Next up is, let me get my agenda. Is Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll has been nominated to the New Orleans Aviation Board.
Good morning to the council and to the city of New Orleans for this opportunity to present today. I would like to thank the administration, Mayor Cantrell, and last but not least, Mayor Glazer from the city of Kenner for this nomination. Could have chosen many people. I think the question to me is, why do I want to do it? For me is why I want to continue to do it. Full disclosure, I was on the city of Kenner Council for a number of years. I have worked with Director Dolio from the beginning, the first piece of sand for the new airport to its final stage of the airport. So I bring a wealth of knowledge to that, and I've lived in the city of Kenner my whole life to be able to deal with the people with the hard questions about development in the area. And I just believe this would be a good opportunity for me to continue my support to the city of New Orleans, and not only to New Orleans, Jefferson Parish, and St. Charles. We have that triangle that's different from many cities in the country, that the city of New Orleans on the airport, it is in the city of Kenner, but it extends to St. Charles. So I think it's given me an opportunity to work with all the community.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Any other questions for Mr. Carroll? I'll go ahead and move. Seconded by Councilmember Giarrusso. I need one more vote. Thank you, sir. You are appointed to the Aviation Board. Next, it's Judge Michael Bagneris. Judge, will you come up and tell us why you would like to continue serving on the Aviation Board?
First of all, thank you. And it's good morning.
Good morning.
Let me say it's always a sense of pride when you're able to serve on a board that accomplishes so much as a team. Those accomplishments have been recognized by national organizations such as J.D. Powers, where we were listed as the #1 large airport in North America. I think that's saying a mouthful, but I'm especially excited about continuing to serve because of what lies ahead in the future. I'm sure you've all already realized that we're working very, very diligently. So when that rail comes from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, we're gonna get a leg on it coming to the south terminal of the airport. And we're also gonna have light rail coming from the south terminal to the north terminal. In addition to that, I'm excited about what we may be able to do with the south terminal aspect, because we're talking about, man, if we can get to be the maintenance center for airlines, if we can, we will do this next step, which is going to be air cargo coming out of the south terminal. It's just everything just looks so appealing for the future. One last comment. I'm gonna make a prediction, and I hope it comes out to bear. We are on track to exceed passenger travel by the end of this year, to exceed pre-COVID numbers. Everybody's just trying to make COVID numbers. We're going to exceed them by the end of this year. That's my prediction.
Thank you, Judge. Councilmember Green.
Judge Bagnaris has certainly shown his commitment to public service in a number of ways, certainly through his service on the Aviation Board. He served through challenging times, COVID, through the building of a new airport. And as we move forward on important projects such as the light rail from Baton Rouge that would benefit our airport, the potential use of the South Terminal, and other expansions that are going on within the airport, I'm pleased to say that Mike Bagnaris, the judge and the community worker that he is, would be an excellent appointment to continue the work that he's done so well right now. So I'd like to move to appoint Judge Michael Bagnaris to the Aviation Board for a continued term.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And Judge, I want to note that the community obviously supports you as well. So thank you for your continued service. Mr. Jerusa, thank you. And you're reappointed, Judge. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
May I, Madam Chair, at the present time, just throw in that he's also a graduate of a great high school. I just waited until the vote came before.
Where's your time, Judge? We have a legislative grouping number 5 that we're going to skip until JP comes back, Councilmember Morel. So let's go to number 6, discussion and consideration of motion M23-386.
This is Councilmember Thomas's motion, so somebody's just gonna have to add themselves as a co-author. My biggest question is in the last whereas paragraph, it says that we desire to extend the appointment so that the administration has ample time to, and this is the important part to me, conclude the search and present the council with a candidate for confirmation. That suggests there is a search, we're reaching a point where it's close to being done, and that there are candidates under consideration. And so I would just like information about that going forward.
Do you want to go ahead and defer this?
If there's nobody here.
There's nobody here.
On double.
Yeah. We asked Gilbert.
Okay. Well, it sounds like maybe somebody from the administration will be coming down, so I'm happy to wait until somebody can answer the question subject to the chairs.
Okay, why don't we take a brief recess, get our chair back and try to see if someone's coming down for this item, number 6.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize. I'm back. We are now on item. Let's see. I've got to get, we're so far afield right now. Give me a second. I can figure out where we're supposed to be. Which, am I on the wrong binder?
No, you're in the binder.
Okay. Okay, item 5. Legislative grouping regarding Mardi Gras and Carnival. Let's go to all those. Julia, why don't you go take a mic over there and start explaining stuff? I know, totally just caught you on the spot.
You did. You want to take this?
Yes. Go right through it. Why don't you go take Adam's seat? Making her debut on, public access TV, Julia Zuckerman, my wonderful legislative director. Julia, why don't you go through the legislative grouping as the Mardi Gras ordinances?
Yeah, so the first thing we have is the ordinance, and there's an amendment also on that ordinance. We make several housekeeping revisions that just makes language more consistent throughout and makes some things a little bit easier to understand. We increased the parade cap from 30 to 34, as that actually reflects the number of parades that we have rolling. We also removed the exception language from the cap. We increased the number of night parades allowed from 2 to 3, again, to reflect what actually is happening. We limit Mardi Gras parades to no more than 3 official stops along the parade route. The stops must be designated by the carnival organizations when they submit their parade permit. You need to identify the float number, the float name, and the exact location of where they will be stopping. So for instance, Captain's Float 12 will stop at Gallier Hall. If a parade float makes an undesignated stop, then they should be issued a violation that results in a $500 fine to the carnival organization and is also grounds for possible revocation of the Mardi Gras permit for that carnival organization. The reason why the 3 stops is important is because public safety experts, including our own Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Department of Homeland Security, point out the large gaps in our parades are problematic from a public safety standpoint. So the Mayor's Mardi Gras Advisory Committee actually advanced this proposal to limit the number of stops along the parade route to kind of close those gaps as best possible. The order of Mardi Gras parades will continue to be set by council ordinance in Chapter 34. But the annual parade schedule, including the time and the route start location, will now come from a council motion. So that every year we're not going back to change an ordinance in the code. Also, at the request of the Mayor's Mardi Gras Advisory Committee, we're amending the order of the parades to place Legion of Mars after Pontchartrain on the first Saturday of Mardi Gras. This is the only change to the order of parades. We remove all parade permit limits for marching club parades on Mardi Gras Day. Currently, I think it's set at only 5 specific marching crew clubs can march on Mardi Gras Day. So we remove that limiting language. We revised the minimum number of marching bands to be the minimum number of elements. There's a change to the location of inspection stickers and 20 circuit amps. That change comes directly from the New Orleans Fire Department. There's a prohibition on Mylar confetti. The only confetti cannons that will be allowed would be paper. No paper streamers or other paper products exceeding 36 inches can be thrown. This would include toilet paper. Beads must be plain and unadored and contain the carnival organization's logo, name, or other identifying features specific to the carnival organization. And any words or images on the beads have to relate to the parade theme, or the float theme. We expand the penalty language to include not just violations by a carnival organization, but also any member of the carnival organization or anyone riding on a carnival organization's float. Finally, we remove the section on permit revocation, as that topic is already addressed in the penalty section and is unnecessarily duplicitous. So those are the changes we have to the ordinance. We also have a motion to create the Carnival Advisory Committee. It is a 7-person committee. It would meet at least twice. once immediately after the 2024 season, and then a second time to propose final legislative changes. This would be a second chance for the council to come back and look at the Mardi Gras code, maybe clean up some additional language, make other changes that we might think are necessary to promote the majesty of Carnival. The 7 members would be 3 council members, a member of the fire department, a member of the police department, a member of a carnival organization that is recommended by the mayor's Mardi Gras Advisory Committee, and then a member of the community at large.
Yes, sir.
Just want to, I got a call from a Mardi Gras captain, a crew captain. This won't increase any fees to parade at all. Okay,
No.
thank you.
I think what's important to recognize, and I think it's something we have to explain to voters on a regular basis, is when it comes to actual parade days and floats, the city's skin in the game when it comes to Mardi Gras is we have a fixed fee for floats. So they don't pay for police, they don't pay for sanitation, they pay the permit fee and the city absorbs the cost for that. That is part of the reason, for example, where we visited the toilet paper, because it's an issue that's been ongoing for years with Parks and Parkway with cleanup, and also with sewage and water board, because much of that pulp ends up in drains and actually clogs up drainage. So the reason why some of these accommodations were changed or made is actually because since we're absorbing the cost of doing all this work, also with the stops. When the parades take longer because there's multiple unscheduled stops, beyond the fact that it's a safety issue with Homeland Security, it's an issue for our fire department and police because those guys are out longer, the parades take longer, overtime that we're taking the cost on goes exponentially up. These are all accommodations to make sure Mardi Gras runs more efficiently. We have one card from Mr. Unless there's any other council members, we have one card from Mr. Kenneth Beck on behalf of the Spartan Society.
Good morning, Council. Yes, my name is Ken Beck and I'm the representative of the Spartan Society today. I do have some concerns about the ordinance as it's being proposed to change the Mardi Gras ordinances. And I would like to address those. I've spoken with Ms. Zuckerman about perhaps meeting with her afterwards so that we could talk about those things specifically. But in general, I just wanted to comment on sections E and F of the proposed changes. And that is that normally there's a discernible problem or a discernible interest, an issue that we're trying to correct and change. For instance, you've mentioned the Mylar cannons. I applaud that. I live on St. Charles Avenue. I'm on the parade route. I was without power for 2 days as a result of a Mylar cannon being shot into the transformer across the street from my house. I applaud the change regarding toilet paper. It winds up in my drains as well, and it's really a difficult situation every year. So, but sections E and F don't seem to address any discernible problem, and they're rather broad brushstrokes, and those broad brushstrokes can be very misinterpreted and easily misunderstood without any purpose or any reason for them. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about how they may be misapplied. If you want me to go into specifics, I will, but I think that we can probably, if you're going to defer this to another date and allow some changes to be made or discussion to be had.
This has been, so I appreciate you being here today. We've been working diligently with the Mardi Gras Advisory Committee, of which as a board, you're a member of it. And this has been multiple months of negotiation. There is an expectation that the city of New Orleans as a body subsidizes Mardi Gras to a very extensive degree. That is not an opinion, that's a fact. And as we are subsidizing it, there's 2 issues that E specifically addressed. We have gotten complaints for years that we have crews within crews, that we have a larger crew that does not meet the basic criteria to continue to be a crew. So they kind of have 3 or 4 crews ride within them. And we have a tremendous 300 deep waiting list of other crews that want to participate in Mardi Gras. Part of this issue we're addressing is, and this was in concert discussed with the Mardi Gras Advisory Committee, is if you're riding inside of Endymion, the assumption is everybody in Endymion's Endymion. So all of those beads, all that flair will be Endymion related. What we've seen happen more often over the years is you'll be inside of a parade and then you have 3 or 4 parades inside that parade that are throwing their own separate themes and their own separate beads, and they're not one unified organization. If we are going to, as a city, continue to subsidize Mardi Gras and have expectations we have upon a larger organization, because all the rules apply to the master organization that has the permit, there has to be consistency. The other issue is we've gotten complaints from everyone over the years regarding, let's just say, bees that aren't related to Mardi Gras. And if the city of New Orleans is going to subsidize Mardi Gras, and Mardi Gras is an event that promotes Mardi Gras and the cruise, there's no reason why there should be beads that aren't related to the crew. And oftentimes, and every crew says it, when something happens, they go, what's a member? And we can't identify that member, so we have no responsibility. If the rules are clearly set as to what the expectations are, those expectations are communicated directly to those members, then it is upon that organization to make sure their members are complying with it. And this is simply to make sure that all the rules are going to be applied equally and equitably to all the crews involved. So I appreciate you don't think E is a problem. I have met with the Mardi Gras Advisory Committee, and they are in agreement. This is a compromise to address those 2 problems that are perceived by the public and by the council.
I would respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I'm a member of the Mardi Gras
certainly have
Advisory Committee, and we were informed at the very last meeting of the committee that there would be no issue with regard to throws this year. And that the concern, as you addressed crews within crews, was with regard to the look of a parade being a singular parade as opposed to multiple parades within oneself. Clubs have spent a lot of money already in their beads and their bead purchases and their throw purchases. Bead manufacturers have been working for months now on thousands and thousands of dollars. I know one crew whose deposit on beads was over $100,000. And that's not one of the larger crews. This money is extended for periods of time, like maybe I'm going to have this on a 3-year period, and we're going to sell this for the next 3 years. If you limit it as with the broad brushstroke that you're limiting in section E, that could economically affect these clubs for a long time, as well as the bead manufacturers. I mean, from what you're saying now, and we've never been discussing this in the Mardi Gras Advisory Committee meetings, not once. You can't throw a Saints bead. You can't throw a breast cancer awareness bead. You can't throw, my wife collects flamingos. I ride a horse in my parade. There's no flamingo theme to my horse. I can't throw my wife a flamingo bead, even though I don't understand that. You know, you're limiting people's expression. You're limiting people's ability to support causes such as breast cancer awareness, LSU beads, all of these kind of, put a flower on a bead and you can't throw that.
With all due respect, you could have a flamingo bead that also says flamingo and has Spartan on it or Sparta. I appreciate that any group can come and get a parade permit, pay for their own sanitation, pay for their own police. Any group. That is, we cannot as a city discriminate against someone who wants to hold a parade if they show up and go through the permit process. What Mardi Gras crews get, which is a significant benefit, is you pay a small, paltry in comparison fee for a Mardi Gras permit in exchange for presenting a parade that celebrates Mardi Gras, celebrates the themes. I mean, part of the reason why that language is so inclusive is if you've got a float that has a breast cancer awareness theme and it says breast cancer awareness or it's pink and it has the crew's name on it as well, you're covered. As long as we know which crew threw the bead, you're covered. There's no limitation on expression. But for our purposes, one, we are picking up all the beads that no one else gets. So we have a significant interest in making sure that, I appreciate that people have already paid deposits. Honestly, the biggest difficulty in doing anything with Mardi Gras is there's a perpetual, well, let's just wait till next year. Let's just wait till next year. I mean, this is difficult this year. Let's do it next year. And that's kind of what has made Mardi Gras as a whole difficult to tighten and clean up language. If your concern is for next year, this is too soon, that's a conversation we could have. We could have and say the enactment date for the bead provision starts for 2025. That's what we could have. If it's, well, let's talk about it some more. I began this conversation right after Marty. I'm kind of talking to death, but to your point, we've tried to be accommodating of not having it be overly burdensome because we are changing midstream for this upcoming Mardi Gras season. So if that's your concern, and we'll talk to y'all on the Mardi Gras Advisory Committee, and you want provisions to go into effect for 2024, 2025, I guess the next Mardi Gras season, I'm open to that, especially if deposits have been paid and money's been spent. And I think we can accommodate that. But as far as like freedom of expression, you can really still do whatever you want as long as your crew is attached to the beat, so we know where the beat came from.
When I refer to that, Councilman, with all respect, I'm referring to individuals on floats. And I'm also thinking of the businesses who distribute Mardi Gras beads. Hush Appeals, located in the city of New Orleans. They have all kinds of beads available. People won't be able to buy them. That impacts them economically. That impacts a business within the city that's a thriving business, as well as the individual members and as well as the crews. I just think that we need to think about clarifying what this section of the ordinance change is about, so that, and you gave me some insight today that's not in the change and it's not explained as
well, I mean,
part of the wherefore.
The challenge is that we have to pass ordinances that can be broadly applied and not favor any group over another group. So the language that is in this ordinance is the language that can be in an ordinance. And I think from the city's purview, we have an expectation, the city of New Orleans, that if we're going to have Mardi Gras and have this symbiotic relationship with crews, there have to be expectations on both ends. Part of why we revised the ordinance is that there have been for years questions whether or not this crew should roll or that crew should roll. Part of us clarifying all the languages, as long as you meet this criteria, you can roll forever, as long as you meet the criteria in the ordinance. I don't want any crew to feel like because something happened outside of the Mardi Gras ordinance that they're in threat of not being able to roll. This contract works both ways. As long as you meet the criteria, you continue to get your $17.50, I think it is, permit to roll each year. But there has to be an expectation on both ends. As far as your concerns regarding the timing, we could certainly work on that. And I'm more than open. Part of the reason why we build into the language with the motion coming back after Mardi Gras to revisit it is because we know there are going to be hiccups that happen this Mardi Gras season that might affect how we finally, after this Mardi Gras season, position the ordinance. So that's kind of built in too. We're all going to come back afterwards and say what worked and what didn't. Maybe we have crews that need to do 5 stops and not 3. And that becomes a burden where NOPD and Homeland Security say, well, maybe 4 is appropriate or 5 is appropriate. We'll have the ability with that second meeting to come back and say, well, let's make it 4 or 5. We might have crews that do things that we're not even thinking of right now that are actionable that weren't included in here. I mean, we can revisit all of that when we come back to that second look back, but I do think that generally speaking, there have to be clear rules. And I would argue that part of the challenge we've had as elected officials is the rules as they exist aren't clear enough for the crews or for those of us who are required to enforce the ordinances.
And with respect, that's exactly my issue with sections E and F. It's not clear enough. I appreciate the dialogue, sir. I'm not going to take up your time. I look forward to continuing working with you all. Councilman Harris, I live in your district. I appreciate the things that you've done for us.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here today. Thank you. I have a card, but there's no name on it.
That's being found.
Ms. Ford, you gotta put your name on the
I'm
card.
sorry. I didn't know that this long dialogue was gonna take place because I didn't want to get passed by. I thought it was just gonna be,
Well,
you know.
whenever we start talking to people, they get longer than 2 minutes because we can't, questions or follow-up are different, but yes.
Okay.
I talked to you longer than 2 minutes.
All right. Yeah, but then I get the rolling eyes and.
I can't control people rolling their eyes at you, Ms. Ford.
All right, cool. All right. But I'm gonna tell you, me having to explain to my 11-year-old grandson what the racist beads that get thrown from floats mean when we all out having a good time, a very family-oriented Mardi Gras experience. And I have to explain that. It harms me and it harms him because he can't understand why people would hate him to give him such a thing as that. And we have had our mega crews that have had floats in their parades that distributed these types of beads openly and transparently. And we deserve better than that. And I'm sorry if you feel like your crew is wasting money, but you don't have enough money to pay me for the experience of explaining that to my grandbaby. You don't have enough money for that. And I'm sorry that you're losing money, but if you went and pissed away your money on beads that can't be thrown from a parade, that don't have no relevance to me. It's not as important as my grandbaby is. Anybody's grandchild, nobody's child should have to see that, black or white. It's not good. It's not good for our community's relations. It's not good for Mardi Gras. And Mardi Gras is not just about how you choose to spend your money. We have something here with Mardi Gras that has been a part of this community since before I was born 62 years ago. I've been doing Mardi Gras. And look, we have gone through some things because it has not always been an inclusive event. It has been a very racist event for a very long time. So we're not going to go back there to those mountains that we have crossed over to keep waiting year after year to have these conversations about what we're going to do with Mardi Gras to make it better. You know, so yeah, we need that. And we need to have someone that sits on this committee, this Mardi Gras committee. I don't see enough local people involved in the decisions that are being made. That's why our Mardi Gras is starting to look like something else. It's starting to look like something else. Every year, it gets more and more the appearance of what people who are not from this community perceive it to be. Because people who are not from this community perceive that what happens in the French Quarter is the only thing that's important to Mardi Gras. And that's not true. Mardi Gras is a very family-oriented event. And you guys all know that. If you've been here all your life, you know that. It's a very family-oriented occasion. And we got to get some kind of control. And I appreciate commentary about it because, you know, I'm going to be watching it. And if those bees start coming out, this Mardi Gras, I want every Mardi Gras crew to know that the community is on patrol. And if that's coming from that float, it's going to affect that crew. So yeah, we need the crew to be named clearly. We need to know what crew it is because it's going to affect your whole crew because we've had enough of it. This community has had enough of it.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Next, we have Mr. Jason Tulos from myself and Throda LLC.
Good afternoon, Council. My name's Jason Tullis. I'm a member of Carnival here in the city. I ride in several clubs, sit on the board. I'm a past king. I have the honor of being a past king in Orleans Parish. We have a large float. We have people that come in from out of town from all over the world, as far as Australia. I have individuals that come in from, pardon me, ma'am, I apologize, with respect. We do not throw racist items. We are inclusive. I have the largest inclusive float in one of our clubs. We have past kings, past queens from Zulu, from members outside in Orleans Parish that ride. We are one unit. We are the spirit of what we feel embodies Mardi Gras. We are everyone. My concern is also about the throws. I also do have a throw business that I bring things in. We do not produce racist or biased things, but we do produce things that just say Happy Mardi Gras. Based on this ordinance, an individual can't throw something that just says Happy Mardi Gras, whether it be from a parade on Tuesday or a parade the week before. I feel that if this is trying to eliminate, suggestions or racist comments or whatnot, let's go ahead and specifically outline that and not take something so special from just a generic bead or a generic throw that says Happy Mardi Gras.
The challenge is, legally speaking, you can't do that.
But
you cannot, it is not defensible under the First Amendment to preference one type of speech over another. Even if we had language that said no hateful, no racist beads, the challenge you run into is that there is and we have a lot of lawyers up here, there is a body of case law that says that is discrimination against free speech. Since the way we're addressing that is by deeming this as a event and specifying what types of beads are allowed without giving preference to any type of speech. That is how we're addressing that. We can't selectively say Happy Mardi Gras is okay, but sacrifice your dog tomorrow is inappropriate. Under the law, they're both free speech. So by saying these are the types of beads that are allowed without giving preference to any type of speech, that's the way you have to skin that cat. That's just the way it is. I mean, honestly, there's a reason why, despite the fact for 2 Mardi Gras, we have had explicitly racist throws. Has any crew faced repercussions for it? The answer is no, because under the current law, there isn't any repercussions that wouldn't run afoul of the First Amendment. So if this were an ideal world and we could address it that specifically, sure, that's what we prefer to do. This isn't an ideal world. We're constrained by a significant body of law on free speech, and this is how you address it in a fair way. I mean, like a previous speaker said, well, previous to Ms. Ford, I think that there certainly can be a ramp up period where we give people the ability over a year to try and figure out how we get there. This doesn't affect bees that are handed out that aren't from Mardi Gras crew. I mean, I'm sure Throw Dat isn't just going to Mardi Gras crew, it's going to everybody who wants to use beads during the Mardi Gras period. But for this city and the way we handle Mardi Gras, this is the only way we could address it. Because honestly, I mean, Ms. Ford had a lot of passionate things to say, but I will tell you, as an African-American man, having 2 Mardi Gras in a row where ridiculous racist beads are thrown by people who are trying to not just discriminate, but ruin Mardi Gras and put parents in awkward positions of, why does this bead have a monkey on it that says something derogatory? Why does this bead say these awful things about a certain type of people? The fact that we do that, allow that, is offensive. The fact that we're subsidizing crews that allow that is beyond offensive. So I appreciate your position. In an ideal world, we could do it that way. We can't do it that way. This is the only way you can address it.
And I appreciate your comments and with respect, what you are saying though, is that someone can make beads or throws that are racist in nature as long as they put their name on it.
They absolutely can.
It's the verbiage, and that we're limiting freedom of speech, right. And Carnival is based off of expressionism and the people that bring things in there. Carnival has changed over the years, which is for a good thing. We are putting these restraints on the people that mean well and have no ill intentions, but we're still allowing you or someone else. I'm a member of the LGBT community. I don't want to receive things like that are discriminatory, but we're still saying that, you can do that if you want, as long as you put your name on it. And there's no comments in here that's saying, as a result of you doing something that's discriminatory and putting your name on it, X will happen. But what we are saying is that if you make a kind gesture out there that just says Happy Carnival, Happy Mardi Gras, we love the city of New Orleans, you're even saying we can't even throw something that may even have the cathedral, the symbol of our city, on it any longer. If we throw that, we get in trouble. But if we throw something that says race, that's racist.
First off, one, you're 100% right. If a crew wants to produce racist beads and throw them with their crew's language on it, they absolutely can. I would hope that a crew that decides to take that route, their membership would be sufficiently aware that maybe they would not meet the crew membership requirements to run the next year. That's the only way we can address that. Every example you said, you want to throw up a bead with the cathedral on it and your crew's name is on it, you can do that all day. You can do anything you want as long as you identify who's doing it. What I'm tired of is when this stuff happens, every crew goes, wasn't me. Wasn't me, and you can't prove it wasn't me. And if a parade is thrown from a float and don't come back down here. If a parade is thrown from a float during a crew and we can prove that float came from that crew, that is sufficient to violate this ordinance. So I appreciate we have a difference of opinion. I previously said I'm more than willing to work with people to address the economic hardships, but you know what? No. Well, you and I fundamentally disagree on the fact that I think if some crew decides they want to be the next Ku Klux Klan crew, I would hope they don't have the proper membership to run a Mardi Gras next year, and we can legally and properly take them off the rolls versus under current law, they can throw whatever the hell they want out, all claim it wasn't them, and us have no way whatsoever to enforce the law.
I appreciate your comments. Councilmember, do you ride in any parades? Are you a member of any organization?
I do not ride any parades because, well, sorry, I've ridden in 1 or 2 parades in my entire life. I've lived here my entire life, but you know what's interesting? Most of New Orleans can't afford to ride in a parade. So I'm speaking for all the people that are in the cheap seats because they can't afford to pay crew dues, but their tax dollars are subsidizing it. Thank you.
Thank you for your response.
Mr. Green, you have a point you want to make?
Because I've gotten questions, I'm just gonna ask you to clarify the correct parade order route that's in the description of the ordinance.
Yes, the parade order route is exactly the same with the exception of Crew of Mars, which is given a specific time now, which they were a new crew last year. They were kind of put into it, but they weren't actually given a specific date and time they roll. That's the only change.
Right, so in general, there's no intent to change routes.
Nope, no change to routes or anything like that. In fact, it actually is better than what we currently do because we currently do an ordinance every year to establish what the routes are. We're now doing a motion, so it will be much clearer. We're not changing the route.
Is there a St. Aug exception? I just wanna ask.
Well, considering St. Aug marches in every parade, I think they're covered everywhere.
The crew of purple and gold is coming.
Crew of purple and gold is coming. All right, all right. With that, I will move that we take up these ordinance one by one to forward them to the full council. Why don't we start with ordinance 34-8? I'll move. Can I get a second? Second by Councilmember Green, please vote your machines. That's 4 yeas, no nays. It's sent to the full council. Next ordinance is amendment to, well, actually, do we take this properly done in order? I need it would be amendment as a separate.
It doesn't
item.
matter because the council's still.
We take it up. Okay. We'll skip the amendment. We did the discussion of the motion discussion. So with that, we have completed our agenda. We are in recess.
Item 6.
I'm sorry, item 6. I forgot. Yes, that's right. Come on down, Mr. Threat. God forbid I forget item 6. All right.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Moreno. I'm just Morel, I'm sorry.
The M's run together, we look alike, it's fine. I keep calling council, I keep calling council member Harris, Councilman Harris, so I think it was time for me to get.
I was one of those brain dead days for me. I apologize.
You're good, Mr. Threat.
I'm just here to, answer any questions by the council on the extension requests for the.
And I guess the question I have, and I think you can anticipate, is very simple. We've already given an extension on this interim appointment. When I spoke to Mr. Montano, my concern was if you have someone that's being onboarded, that's one reason to give an extension, but we can't perpetually have Ms. Porteous as an interim.
I understand.
So do you have a lead on someone who's going to be replaced?
I do have leads on 2 candidates. I think I sent over the resumes to the governmental rep. To council. We're in the interviews this week, myself and CEO Montano. Hopefully I'll have someone there. I mean, not to say that Sarah Porteous is not doing a fabulous job.
I guess my concern is we all agree that Sarah Porteous is doing, well, we don't all agree, but most of the council agree she's doing an exceptional job. And if she has the votes for confirmation, it gets to a point where you're like, the decision needs to be made here to make her. Yeah, I mean, if there's a lead and you have 2, I guess my question would be, do you need 120 days?
I do,
That's
it
4 months.
probably won't be 120 days for
Would-
that decision to be made.
I'll talk to Councilman Thomas. I might have less, but this period or shorter. Because we've already given a
I
significant
understand.
extension before. And this might create some urgency to fill the position, or in the alternative, put up Ms. Porteous to be the actual person.
Right, exactly. And you know, we've raised the salary from 145 to 170 and we've had 100.
That is this job that Ms. Porteous doesn't want it.
He doesn't want to work with you, JP.
I mean, Ms. Porteous, initially, Ms. Porteous was motivated to take the job and things have changed. So
Okay.
she's double hatted right now as chief of staff and acting director. I'm trying to convince her to yes, but it's gonna take some time.
Okay, well, Ms. Harris will talk to her and get her to say yes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so either way, I'll talk to Councilman Thomas directly, but I will likely bring an amendment shortening that period, because I think 120 days is excessive, but based upon your testimony that there's somebody in the works,
Yeah.
I think an extension would be appropriate.
We have 3 viable candidates. We've had candidates before. One went to Sewer and Water Board. Another one was, you know, it's some political stuff, recall and stuff going on that kind of ran them off. But we're interviewing next week and we'll have an answer. So shortening the 120 days is acceptable to the administration.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, I move that we recess till Tuesday at 1 PM. Can I get a second to that motion to recess? Second by Councilmember Harris. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
4 yeas, no nays. We are recessed to Tuesday at 1 PM. Thank you.